Natalie, do you want to sort of be in charge of that then, or
Yeah.
should I be
You,
viewing the?
I've typed it into the chat room for everybody to see, but the one that we have that's written is from David Braun, and I can read that out loud when it gets to him.
Okay, so we'll just go in order of how you wrote it then.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, and so then we'll go to Catherine Egan first.
Thank you. So I am the new Ridgeville Park District Urban Agriculture Supervisor and running the new Youth Grow Team, which of course is a new Ridgeville program. So in the summer, we work with teen employees and we use urban agriculture to teach them professional skills. Skills like teamwork, team leadership, follow through, long-term planning. These are skills that will serve them for the rest of their lives. And we have each teen identify a couple of skills that they really want to focus on throughout the program. And then through feedback sessions and coaching, we help them refine those skills. We also, of course, donate our produce to Hillside Food Pantry through our partnership with Edible Evanston. And we're also working with the teens to install pollinator plantings throughout Ridgeville parks. So these help us both educate our kids as well as the community about medicinal as well as environmental benefits of pollinator plants. And finally, we in the spring and fall welcome volunteers to come and work with us, plant and harvest the garden. And this of course allows us to donate a lot more produce to the food pantry. And if any of you all are wanting to come volunteer, get your hands dirty, we're of course welcoming you all around August 15th. So Natalie can help you get in touch with me if you're interested. And finally, I just wanted to say thank you to Natalie and Brian for saying yes to this program and to the board for helping to make it possible. I have run this type of program in the past, and I can attest that it is a profoundly and uniquely powerful tool to help kids both develop their own potential and also serve our community in lasting ways. Thank you for having me here today, and thank you for your support.
Oops, I said thank you, Catherine, but I was muted still. Next, we'll hear from JC Herman. And JC, I see you on here, but there you are. Okay.
Hi there. I'm JC Costa Herman. I am the Arts Camp Director, Ridgeville resident. I am a parent of program participants, and I'm also on the Ready Committee. Ridgeville Park District is guilty of perpetuating inequities. The participants in programming have mostly been white. Not much has been done to work against our oppressive system. Last year, this was brought to the board's attention, leading to a commitment to change. Some changes have been put into place, and preparations for a shift in how the organization functions is underway. With Pat's guidance, we're moving towards turning Ridgeville into an anti-racist organization. So a bunch of my statement is specifically to Mr. Dan Coyne. Last summer, you tried to remove Lois, claiming she was hired because she was married to Brian, insinuating she wasn't qualified or competent. You wanted to replace her with a person of color because you said the rest of the summer staff was white. The truth is that Lois works with kids year-round and is beloved for her warmth and capabilities in both positions. She was also the only white camp director. This shows that you don't actually know about Ridgeville or its staff. When you've had concerns, you presented them to the public in a way that distorts information. When you asked to have Ridgeville's barbecue ban lifted, you made it seem like Ridgeville had a barbecue ban, which it does not. Now, you're suggesting to people that dissolving the park district could add money to the reparations fund, which is not what's stated in Illinois law. You promoted misinformation. You have fueled fear amongst our community members that Ridgeville is intentionally discriminating against people. You claim that you've worked towards making Ridgeville more equitable, but I don't see evidence of that. I've seen revenue go up considerably, but I have not seen a targeted effort towards institutional change until Natalie and Martha spearheaded the current movement towards making Ridgeville an anti-racist organization. And it's unnerving that you have responded by bringing your own movement to dissolve the Park District. You claim you want the best for our community. If that's true, you will step down from your position on this board. Your actions clearly show you're not interested in improving our relationship with the community. You don't know enough about what happens at Ridgeville to promote its positive aspects. And you don't support the much needed changes in policies and procedures that we're trying to put in place, because if you did, you would not have initiated a conversation around dissolving the Park District. I'd like to ask the board, in the event that Mr. Coyne does make the right decision and removes himself from the board, I ask that you appoint a person of color. My hope is that someone from the community who believes in our mission, who has had experience with our programs, and who's willing to learn and fight alongside us for a more equitable Park District would be the perfect person to fill this void. I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it. Ridgeville is a place that provides affordable, high-quality programming. We absolutely have a lot of work to do to make sure that programming is equitable, and we need people here who are willing to do the work. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, JC. We have David Braun next, and his was in writing. Is that correct, Natalie?
Yes, I can read that.
Okay.
He says, I am addressing this comment to Natalie's attention to be read at the July 9th Park District Board meeting. My comment concerns Dan Coyne's initiative to dismantle the Ridgeville Park District. Though I understand that this has been his preoccupation for a considerable amount of time, I believe that it is to be under discussion at this evening's board meeting. Shortly after Dan was reelected, I attended a board meeting during which I addressed Dan, saying that though I didn't agree with his methods and approach, I did believe that he thinks he is doing good for the Park District, and that has some positive intentions. This initiative to dissolve the Park District completely negates that possibility. It is so highly inappropriate, toxic, and contrary to the honorable intentions of a community member elected to serve the interests of the board that I feel I must speak out. Dan, I am a former co-worker and fellow social worker, as well as a member of the Ridgeville community. I find your actions to be reprehensible, and if you have this much malicious intent towards this Park District, I suggest you resign. If you genuinely have an interest in serving the Evanston community or humanity in general, there is certainly a better way and place for you to devote your time and energy.
Thank you, Natalie, for reading that comment from David Braun. It's my understanding then that that concludes the citizen comments, both in writing and people who wanted to speak. If there's anyone present right now who wants to speak, just go ahead and unmute yourself, or you can do the raise hand function. You can turn your camera on so that we can see you. I'll just give it a second here in case that applies to anybody. I know sometimes there's a technology delay.
Hi, this is Beth Stair. I'm in the car driving to California, but so I can't really look at the screen or anything. Will there be citizen comments at the end?
Yes, there will.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm really excited about the new Ready committee webpage. I think that's really great. I look forward to hearing about it tonight. I'm not sure if I'll be able to do a comment later, but I wanted to just say that I'm happy to see the efforts towards turning the whole organization with sort of doing a transformation with an anti-racist focus. I really think that's great. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Beth. And because it turned out that there was at least one person who wanted to chime in, I'm just going to give it another second in case there's anybody else. Okay. I am going to move on in the event that there are no other citizen comments. We do, as I just confirmed, have the citizen comments at the end as well. So anyone who sticks with us or tunes in later can speak at that time. We are going to move to the approval of the minutes, and we have two meetings to approve. The first is June 11th, 2020. So I'll entertain a motion to approve those meeting minutes. That's June
I'll make a
11th,
motion to
2020.
approve the minutes of June 11th.
And is there a second?
Second.
So I think we best if when people made a motion or seconded, they did state their name so that it's apparent on the recordings.
Pat
Okay,
McCourt-
sure. So let's do that again. Let's just start over with the motion.
Pat McCourt makes a motion to approve the minutes of June 11th.
Matthew Mitchell seconds the motion.
Okay, thank you. And is there any questions, discussion, any issues with the meeting minutes from anybody?
No.
Okay, so then just a reminder, we're doing every single vote roll call in these virtual meetings. So I'll turn it over to Julie to approve the minutes.
Sounds good. Braun,
Yes.
Coin,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
McCourt,
Yes.
and Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay, great. Then we're moving on to the approval of the meeting minutes from June 26, 2020, and I'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Pat McCourt makes a motion to approve the minutes of June 26th. Sorry.
Debbie Braun will second the motion.
Okay, any questions or issues, discussion of those meeting minutes from anybody? And before I go on, I just want to say last time, I think we had raised hands as opposed to using the chat function. I think that worked pretty well, but there were a few times that if I'm not looking at the screen, literally 100% of the time, I might miss somebody putting a hand up. So either keep it up if I don't see you, or feel free to just start talking and say, I wanted to speak. So it sounds like there's no issues or discussion, and then I'll turn it to Julie for a roll call vote of approving those minutes.
Braun,
Yes.
Coin,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
McCourt,
Yes.
and Mitchell.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. Moving on then to approval of the bills, and I will ask Brian to tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, your July 9th, 2020 bills, I will go over the unusuals. First thing I'll tell you is we had $1,530 in refunds, and those were continued to be COVID refunds or camps that were canceled and or folks who wanted to remove themselves or remove their child from a future camp because of COVID. So here goes some of the unusuals. Home Depot was $1,500. We bought storm windows for the Garage Art Studio in year-ending spending. It was in last year's budget. K Park Recreation, 7 more benches. Little Tykes was a swing set, the one that was removed between South Boulevard and Seward and a tot lot. That will go in hopefully in the next month and a half, 2 months, when we slow down a little bit. I wanted to make sure I mentioned Courtney Lyons Brown, $100. She made us some reusable masks that most of the staff is using, and you can take it home and wash it and reuse it. So it keeps the disposable mask price down. Pilot Rock is the hot coal dispensers for the ashes and the coals. They are not here yet, but we have ordered them, and we'll hold that check until they arrive. Bunnell Andrews Construction was the concrete for the benches and the front porch repair. The crack in the front porch or the front staircase at 908 Seward has been repaired. Quill is mostly office furniture. That's a very large bill for Quill. It's some office supplies, but it's mostly office furniture, which was in the budget. Russo Power Equipment, year ending, we bought hedge line trimmer and tree pruner, hedge and line trimmers and a tree pruner for the maintenance staff. That's it for the unusuals.
Pat McCourt, I'll make a motion to approve the bills in the amount of $32,214.59.
Debbie Braun, I'll second it.
All right, Braun.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry.
Coin, yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
McCourt,
Yes.
and Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to petty cash for July, and I'll turn it over to Brian for this as well.
Okay, petty cash, very large petty cash. It was approved for $6,000 last month, and we knew basically 2 weeks into the month we were going to have some issues. So we contacted President Gaines and asked for 2 more thousand in petty cash, which he approved. So here's a little bit of the unusuals. Amazon was a variety of things. It was fertilizer, the Prime prescription, some zip ties, shelves, office desks, cleaning supplies, and masks, disposable masks. American Meadows was seeds and bulbs and plants that are going around the Park District, which Catherine Egan just talked about. Evanston Organics, $5,400. Those are wood chips that went in a variety of parks. That's the fall zone chips, and it was mostly Elks Park, Reba, and a little bit of Cayman West. MailChimp emails over 2,000. National Awards banner for $105, which we'll put up on Ridge Avenue. Red's Garden Center compost for the gardening program, and Zoom is what we're paying for right now.
Thanks, Brian. A motion to approve petty cash for July.
Pat McCourt, I'll make a motion to approve petty cash in the amount of $7,472.99.
Matthew Mitchell seconds the motion.
And Julie, you want a roll call for us?
Yep. Braun. Debbie Braun. Is that good? Debbie Braun.
She looks frozen. It doesn't look like
Yeah.
that.
He's frozen.
Okay. And we'll move on.
Actually, we have to wait for her because we can't.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me text her and see if she's. She might not even realize that her screen froze, you know.
I text her, Martha.
You did already? Okay.
I can cover everyone else.
Okay, sure.
Coin,
Yes.
Gaines,
Yes.
McCourt,
Yes.
and Mitchell.
Yes.
Natalie, did you hear from her at all?
Trying to get back in.
Okay. Oh, she
May I
is.
ask May I ask a question?
Yeah.
Brian, is it the growth team that was out working in the parks today?
It was Catherine Egan's team. Yeah.
That was her team working in Leiter and Cayman East and West?
Yes.
Okay, great. They looked like they were working hard.
Congratulations to Natalie and Catherine on that. That's a great.
That's great.
For the kids.
Well, I guess we should consider ourselves lucky that we haven't had any technology issues so far. As I stated when we talked last about the governor's recommendations and then IAPD's, reiteration of those recommendations, one of the things they said specifically is to stop the meeting and resolve any technology issues in the moment instead of proceeding without people. So I don't know exactly how long we will do that in the event that there's a prolonged delay here. But I just want to give her the same chance I would absolutely give anyone to get back in. Hey. What are you seeing when you're trying to sign in? Mhm. Oh, that's true. You can call in if you, yeah. And I was going to also ask you if you would like us to wait or if you would like us to move on without you. I mean, if you can call in immediately, I think we'll wait and, confirm that you're in. Do you need the number, Debbie? You have it. Okay. Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, she's about to call in right now, and she said that we can go ahead and continue. So we had just approved petty cash, or we were in the process of voting to approve petty cash?
Do we wait for her to vote or just?
Charlie, can we go back to finish a vote, or does it have to be done in the moment?
I think we're in this gray area of the technology, and my feeling is we know this is already passed. When she gets on the phone, we can just let her record her vote, however she's going to vote. If it was 2-2, I might feel differently about it, but it's 4-0 right now.
Yeah.
Okay, I agree with that. So yeah, we can just check in with her as soon as she's back in here, whenever there's sort of a break and it makes sense. And so let's move on. Then it would be next the monthly reports, and we're starting with Brian Rosinski's report.
Okay, we opened our park play circuits on Wednesday, July 1st. We also opened the basketball courts on Thursday, July 2nd. This was done in conjunction with the city of Evanston as we moved into phase 4 of the governor's Restore Illinois plan. Potential users of the play circuit and the courts are encouraged to follow COVID-19 safety precautions, which include physical distancing, wearing a mask for appropriate ages, using hand sanitizer before and after using the equipment, and play circuits are limited to no more than 50 people. Signs are posted at each site. So that was good news because we were getting a lot of antsy park patrons. Obviously, we need to pass 10 of the budget tonight. It's on the agenda. As you know, the future budget calendar includes passing the appropriations ordinance in September and the levy ordinance in December. The latest tentative budget is in your monthly packet. I am still working on gathering numbers on large capital improvement projects like Reba Park play equipment and resurfacing the 908 Seward parking lot. You should have all received a hard copy today. You have it online. One thing you should know, those numbers are projected numbers and they're subject to change, hopefully not by too much. But if it was going to go into this year's budget, I would firm up solid numbers, and I'm working on Reba and the parking lot as we speak. So all 4th of July major events around the area were canceled due to COVID-19. 4th of July Association in Evanston replaced its normal activities like races and playground games at Cayman East with alternative virtual celebrations. Natalie sent the association several photos of past events at Cayman East for their celebration. I don't know about you, but my neighborhood was very loud with local illegal fireworks. The maintenance crew has been busy adding wood chips to Elks, Reba, and Ridgeville parks. The parks look great thanks to their hard work. We still will be adding chips. We use significant petty cash funds to get this done. And as I already mentioned, President Gaines approved the increase that monthly amount from $6,000 to $8,000. One last late arriving piece of news. On July 14th, next Tuesday, instead of Truck Fest at Brummel Park, it's going to be a little smaller event, but it's going to be moved to Elks Park because of a bigger park, so social distancing will take place. As of now, there's 3 trucks coming. The trucks start at 5:30. The music starts at 7.
Brian, what's the date of that again?
That's Tuesday, the 14th.
Brian, this is Dan. Can you hear me? Oh, good. Just, could you update us? Did we get a porta potty then in any of the parks with the basketball?
No, I checked with the city, and they suggested no porta potties. They are going to bring out a few porta potties for a special event, but there's no porta potty at Ridgeville Park due to COVID.
And Brian, what time again for that event?
Trucks start opening at 5:30, music at 7.
If Commissioner Braun's on, we should record her vote on the last thing and then continue moving forward.
Debbie, you're still muted.
You're muted.
Okay, sorry for all this. What was the last vote on?
We were voting on petty cash, and we actually voted. Everybody voted but you. So we're going to record your vote.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Brian. And does anybody have any additional questions for him? That's, of course, the only Starlight concert from the City Series that happens in one of our parks, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to Jerry's report. Hi, Jerry. Oh, Jerry, we can see you, but we can't hear you. You may have to select something that says sign in with device audio. Are you on a computer? Okay, let me see if I can find where it is for you. If you move your mouse and you go down to mute and click up, I think that's where it will give you options. One of them says test speaker and microphone. We can't hear you still. Well, let's see. Is Natalie here? Natalie, do you have any suggestions for him about connecting with audio?
Yeah, so what you walked him through is the same thing that I would say. If you go down to that mute button, excuse me, and you click the arrow for the select microphone, you can select same as system if you're not using a plugin. And that's really the only thing that I would know to tell you.
Yeah, it also has the option of switch to phone audio, which is interesting because if you're not even on your phone and you're on the computer instead, I'm not sure how you switch to phone audio. Maybe that's only if you're on your phone.
Jerry could also call in. If you called into the meeting on your phone, then we could just hear your voice.
Yeah, so Jerry, can you hear us right now? Okay, he can hear us. So in the event of timing here, let's actually go to Natalie's report. And meanwhile, Jerry, if you wouldn't mind calling in instead of video, is that an option for you? So Jerry, if you heard me, can you just nod if you're gonna call in?
I can email that directly to you, Jerry. I'll do that now.
Okay, and just in case he doesn't have the phone number, obviously, you know, and then we'll touch base with him again. But I think we'll move to your report, Natalie, if you don't mind.
Yep, I'm just gonna send him this email so he can have the phone number. Multitasking. Okay, great. Yes. All right. Happy July. The Ridgeville Readers Book Club this month is celebrating veterans by reading The Operator by Robert O'Neill. Our book discussion will be held on July 26th at 3 p.m. through Zoom. You can email me directly if you're interested in joining us. Virtual camps went very, very well in June. We had about 50 kids total registered that tuned in on different days throughout the month. We decided to move forward with more virtual camps in July, and we've made some adjustments based on feedback that we had received from the kids and the parents. Currently, camps are running Monday through Friday from 10 to 11, and Tuesday and Thursday from 2 to 3. These camps are free, and activity packs are available for any child who requests one. Partner camps in August. So we have 3 camps that will be running in person in August. These are all partner camps. Playwell Technologies will be running their Pokemon Lego camp August 3rd through the 7th, and the Imaginary Game will be running 2 weeks of their cardboard camp. We've moved these camps from Cayman to Ridgeville because there's more space, and also because the field house is being used for the free meal program. We do reserve the right, of course, to cancel these camps if COVID numbers increase, but for now, as we're in phase 4 of the reopening plan, we are moving forward. Farmers Market, Lyons Fruit Farm has been offering delivery to homes on Tuesdays. I spoke with Tom Lyons. He said that's going very, very well. So thank you to the community for engaging with Lyons and keeping them busy this summer. We are going to be moving them back into Ridgeville Park in person on Wednesday evenings, starting July 15th. So starting July 15th, they will be at Ridgeville Park from their normal 3:30 to 7 p.m. time frame. So come see them. Concerts on the Ridge are beginning July 15th. They'll run on Wednesday evenings through August 26th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. We will be very closely monitoring the audience to ensure their safety. We are planning to create squares of space in the grass to indicate 6 feet of distance between neighbors. And while it's not required, we will be requesting that people wear masks if they are able. The concert lineup I have here, we have currently I have 5 bands confirmed, and I'm still working on 2 more. I will update you and Facebook as soon as I have confirmation on those groups. Shakespeare on the Ridge, Mudlark Theater is going to present Much Ado About Nothing at Ridgeville Park, August 7th through the 9th. As a note on that, we are not doing much promotion on the show or on the concerts, just to limit attendance. And I did write a note here a little bit about that. We're limiting promotion in an effort to maintain crowds of 50 or less. It's a challenging time to be planning and managing public events, so we just want to be safe about it. We wish to serve our community by offering engaging summer programs, but of course their safety and the safety of our staff and vendors is of the utmost importance. We do reserve the right to cancel our programs at any time if we believe the risk is too great to either performer and or audience. And that's it. Also, I just want to say, it's not in my report. I'm so glad that you all got a chance to meet Catherine. The Youth Grow team is doing such a great job. They're planting at all of the parks. I got to learn how to drive the truck today so I can water all the plants while they're growing. It's been a really exciting collaboration with her, and they're doing really great work. So happy, very, very happy to have her on the team.
Thank you, Natalie. And thank you so much for all of these thoughtful precautions that have been instituted for some of the are doing. I'm really happy to see us doing events, and I'm really happy to see us doing it in ways that are as safe as we possibly can be. I have one quick question, which is that what are we planning to do in the perhaps unlikely event that markedly more than 50 people show up for any one outdoor event?
Brian and I are talking about it. We're working on that. To be perfectly honest with you, this is a really difficult thing to do. And, you know, we went back and forth about this a lot, and I've thought about it a lot. And to be honest, a lot of the bands that I spoke to, people that I had started booking bands in February. So I did have a couple decide that it was not something they were comfortable moving forward with, which of course I understand. So I don't have the answer yet to that question, but we're going to have to monitor it. I think by creating the space in the lawn to indicate distance between groups of people, I think will be helpful. I'll be there, you know, the foundation folks will be there too. So we're gonna just really closely monitor it. And after the first concert, I think we'll have a pretty good idea of how it's gonna go. I feel pretty optimistic about our patrons. I think they're, you know, obviously taking this very seriously, and also they're concerned about their safety and the safety of their neighbors as well. So it's going to be a group effort. It's going to be a community effort to make sure that this is safe and responsible. And again, if it's not, then we won't do another one. And that's okay.
Makes sense. It's also kind of confusing in a way that's nobody's fault, but it's sort of like, you know, I get the whole don't promote it a ton. That makes sense. But it's also sort of like, come to the event, but not more than 50 of you. And so I think maybe some more finer points could possibly be, like you said, if you mark those spots, because of course any one family could all be within a large circle, right? As long as they're 6 feet away from another family and from another family. And if we're marking spots, then the amount of spots could sort of indicate the total capacity. And we could literally, you know, sort of use that visual indicator of these are the, you know, space is limited, first come, first serve type nature. I mean, that would obviously be true if these were indoor events, because indoor spaces have capacities. So it's so sad to think of turning people away, but I think we just do need to be prepared for how that would go. It's just something I'm thinking about. Matt, Pat, I think I saw your hand up.
I was just curious, Natalie, are the 50 kids that were registered for the virtual camps, are they kids that were already registered before in the other camps, basically?
Yeah, so we had, so normal capacity for the imaginary game, for example, is 36. We have had families pull their kids out of those camps for safety reasons, and they weren't comfortable with that, which is fine. We do have a very extensive wait list for those camps, and at this point, we're not letting anybody into the camps when people pull out. So we're trying to maintain as low a number as possible, which was also part of the reason we moved it to Ridgeville. The kids are outside for most of the day, but you have to consider weather. If it rains, you have to have enough space to safely have those children inside. And so at Ridgeville, between the two facilities, I think we can do that with the like 25 to 30 that we have currently in that program. But yeah, they're all kids that had been previously registered.
And how about the kids for the virtual camps? Are they kids too that were registered? I mean, the kids that
some of them are. So the virtual camps are totally free and open to anybody. Right. So a lot of the kids that have been coming pretty consistently are kids that we know from previous programs, but some of them are brand new, which is great. So you know, it's available to anybody who wants to come. It's totally free. The activity packs are free. I've been delivering activity packs to people's homes. Everybody is welcome to those.
Okay, great. Well, thanks for all that effort.
Yeah.
And then Matt, did you also have your hand up? You did not. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for Natalie? Okay. Again, thank you so much, Natalie, for everything you're doing. And I'm particularly excited about the growing program. I'm just can't wait to hear how that goes. Yeah.
Can you say one more thing? I'm sorry, this also was not in my report. I think a lot of you know, but we did start the mural project at Ridgeville. Evanston Mural Arts Program, we're partnered with them to do a mural on the side of the shed at Ridgeville Park that faces South Boulevard, and it looks great. So it's still in the works. It's been very, very hot, so it's kind of it's going to take a little more time, I think, than anticipated, which is totally fine. But it's looking really good. I'm taking pictures and posting those on social media as we get, as they're updating it and refining it. But thanks so much to Sherry Charlton, who's our artist, and to Evanston Art Encounter for doing that with us.
And speaking of the mural, Natalie, did you already say this? What percentage complete is it right now? Do we have a sense?
I would say it's probably 50% done. She's got a lot up there. There's some refinement. So a lot of the major like color schemes are up there. You can start to see the shapes of the flowers, the butterflies, the things in wilderness. She's going to refine all of that. And then there's going to be children also included in that mural. And I think those come in last. So I'd say she's about 40 to 50% finished.
Great. And then again, speaking of the mural, do you want to just tell everybody real quick about the bench component? I don't know if you mentioned that just now or if we've talked about that at these public meetings, but there's an additional component there.
Yeah, so we've also talked to them about, so we've purchased like brand new fancy benches that have gone into a lot of the parks, but the ones at Ridgeville are, they're very well cemented into the ground and will live at Ridgeville for a very long time. So we've talked to them about stripping those and painting them in complementary colors to the mural, and then doing just small art pieces on each of the benches that would reflect the programming at Ridgeville. So, something to represent like Shakespeare or the concert component, basketball, softball, the camps, yoga, the classes. So just something small that would indicate or reflect rather the programming. I think there's 6 benches in total currently at Ridgeville Park. So it would be 6 benches that we would include in that project.
Very cool. Okay, thanks again, Natalie.
Yep.
I think we'll go backwards then to Jerry if he is ready to go. And Jerry, I noticed that you just had your mute icon there, whereas before it just didn't show anything. So.
Well, it had been muted, and then when it was time to speak, I unmuted it, but the microphone wasn't working. I had to reboot the computer, and I think everything's fine now. I tried dialing in, but it wanted me to enter a participant ID in addition to the meeting ID, so I couldn't. I got into the meeting, but I was muted, and I couldn't unmute from there on the phone. So that was weird too, just so you know. Yeah, anyway, the reports this month reflect interim first pass figures, which are prior to the processing of the accruals and other year-end special accounting steps. They'll be revised as the additional steps are applied. After the August board meeting, when the commissioners approve the final set of adjustments, that's when I'll be able to finalize the figures. I've already heard from the auditors. They are scheduled to come in on the week of September 14th to begin the audit. So they're getting I usually don't hear from them until August, so they're getting a jump ahead on things this year. The appropriations ledger is the first of the monthly reports. It shows that spending is significantly below plan. Overall, it's about 19% or $170,000 below plan. The recreation fund accounts for nearly $130,000 of it. I'll discuss it in a little more detail when we talk about the statement of revenue and disbursements, which is the next report in the package. In the statement of revenue and disbursements, it shows total revenue is below plan by about $100,000. Of that, roughly $80,000 is a shortfall in the recreation fund revenue, primarily because of pandemic-related refunds from the cancellations. The net position of revenues less appropriations shows a favorable variance of $81,000. This compares to the plan for a $6,000 surplus. In light of last month's report about fund balances and surpluses, this suggests that the upcoming budget process should strive to use about $81,000 of unexpended funds because we're going to be turning back an unusually large amount of money. The two most appropriate approaches to use this money would be either to fund capital projects or reduce program revenues while subsidizing program activities from the unexpected funds rather than touching future tax revenues. Moving on to the balance sheet and trial balance, it shows our overall fund balances are just a little over $1 million, $1,014,000. We've got about $350,000 of uncollected tax revenue. That's going to come in the next fiscal year. That gives us total assets of $1,364,000 on the balance sheet. On the liability side, the $860 in liabilities are IMRF payments. That's just typical payroll timing. And just a comment that out of the $1,014,000, Most of that money is encumbered by restrictions or assignments and is, used for specific purpose. The general fund is $274,000, which, just as a reminder, is just for general park district operations. The outstanding items report is longer than usual, you'll notice. A lot of extra work was required this month because of the number of checks that were issued. We basically issued close to a year's worth of checks in a single month. And while most folks have been very diligent and deposited or cashed their refund checks, we still had a significant number that have yet to do that. And so they're on the outstandings list. The timing is a little unfortunate because of the extra steps that are involved in processing the outstandings. And then because it's fiscal year end, there's a lot of extra steps above and beyond the normal steps. So just be aware there's a lot of extra manual work going on this year because of these refund checks. It's extra time and effort on my time and also on the office staff because they've got to track and follow up with people, possibly issue replacement checks. If any of these linger for long enough, it could ultimately end up in a unclaimed property filing with the state of Illinois. In addition, the auditors are going to have a lot of extra steps because they've got to do investigative review of outstandings at year end. This was, it was unavoidable given the circumstances. I mention it mainly just so the commissioners are aware there is a lot of extra work going on because of the refunds this year. To the plus side, because we canceled the camp programs, we don't have the outstanding payroll checks that we would normally have this time of year. Currently, there are 0 outstanding payroll items. So there's a little bit of an offset there. Finally, on the reconcilement of the Treasury Fund, it shows the allocation of the cash and investment balances across the various major and special revenue funds. Our balances at Chase are below FDIC limits because of the amount of outflow of cash we had, and we had no incoming revenues this month because of the timing of things. So we're in one of our low cash seasons of the year. Finally, in closing, I'll just encourage commissioners to periodically revisit last month's written report and give thought to the questions posed in the chart study and the recommendations for long-term capital planning and fund balance policies. We don't want to lose sight of those two issues. And that's my report.
Sorry, I was muted. I said thank you, Jerry. And does anyone have any questions for Jerry or any issues? Okay, I think we will move on then. And so at this point, it would be the Ready Committee update. I realize, I'm sorry, this is an oversight on my part that we didn't actually have Dr. Effiam's report on the agenda as such. But I don't see any reason that we can't be proceeding with it in the Ready Committee update. Maybe that was what everyone else already assumed. I thought it was going to be a line item. But in any case, I think now is the time probably to just turn it over to Dr. Effiam. Does that all sound okay with you and what you thought would happen, Dr. Effiam?
Yes, that's fine. I plan to give a brief with technology. Natalie, can you help me share the screen? But just a brief update. We've talked the last few times about where we're at with the Ready Committee, the training, the board training, and the board training, excuse me, all of which will be complete on this coming Friday.
All set, Pat. You should be able to share now.
All right, thank you. Okay, so here's where we're at, headed into my final report. As you all know, let me see. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so in response to the following concerns that were brought to the board's attention sometime back in the fall, and that being that the vast majority of children participating in the Ridgeville Park programs were white, that there was a lack of connection to people of color in the district, and that police and park equipment had been systemically used as a deterrent for people of color to use the parks. And so that's what led us to this equity assessment. And the goal was to objectively determine if Black African-American people are aware of and use park facilities. If so, do they feel welcome, and had they themselves experienced or witnessed any racism? While using park facilities, had they been stopped by the police or witnessed others being stopped? In addition, what if any efforts have been made by the board to address accusations of racism? Were there other groups that felt marginalized? So to try to get at all of this information, based on early conversations with staff and the two board members, Dan Coyne and Martha Gaines, we determined the best course of action was to hear directly from as many community members as possible. That would include town hall meetings, one-on-one meetings with residents, stakeholders, community partners, staff and volunteers, current and former city council members. We also were going to do focus groups, park visits, classroom group visits, board meetings, and an equity survey. So as you know, I'll pause here for just a minute. We started this right about the time that the COVID-19 sent us all home. And so we had to cancel the 2 town hall meetings. We still have completed some 227 in-person interviews, generally 1 by 1, sometimes in groups of 3 or 4. Again, I was able to walk the parks, but without people being in the parks, you can't get a real sense, and other than access, a real sense of who's using those facilities. I did have the opportunity to drop in on a small group of classrooms before things got started, and as well as online. I have been a presence at the board meetings to see what's happening there. We currently have an equity survey that's up online. I can't remember how many responses we have, but it is still up. And then a literature review, meaning I went through your old and new program books, your current booklets, your on-site messaging, generally looking for, did it feel like it was welcoming? Was it inclusive? Were there pictures of people of color, people with differences in there? If so, were they just groups of Black people and then groups of white people, or did we have groups of people interacting with each other? In addition to that, I've spent many hours going through your policies, and we can talk about that at some point, but spend some time looking for biases that could be potentially hidden in there. And I have also done an extensive 3-year, continue to work on that, 3-year review of police calls to the parks, and have interviewed 7 police officers who have had responsibility for responding to those calls. So some of the questions that were explored during some of these meetings is, what is Ridgeville Park District doing particularly well related to how they serve and collaborate with the diverse communities in Evanston? And we asked them to share samples from their own perspective. And this is interesting. What we're finding here is, and you'll hear me say this, is that clearly the African-American voice in particular is missing. But also when we ask people of color to share, Black people to share examples from their own perspective, they generally could not. They were sharing what they heard about someone else's experience. Related to equity, diversity, inclusion, in what ways would you like RPD to focus new or different energy? Why? What are your unmet goals, needs, expectations? What do you want or need to see happen as a result of this new diversity effort? And what would a satisfactory outcome of RPD current focus on an EDI and inclusion assessment look like? And so I'll come back to you now. So that is the work that we've put in that will become a full written report distributed to the board on August 3rd in preparation for its public release at the board meeting and discussion of August 13th. As I said, there are some things that it is clear that the Black voice is missing. How do we access that voice? It's also clear that we were extremely limited by the COVID virus and the inability to get out and to see and talk to people individually. And of course, one of my recommendations would be to continue that conversation, look deeply at community engagement. How can we actively engage, again, particularly the Black community, in ways that's meaningful for them? in looking through some program materials. There were lots of programs to me that looked like they were that they would be appealing to someone Black, but understand I'm one Black person. So in terms of being able to move forward, we need to hear the voice of a larger Black community and hear their own voices. So how we attack that will become critical to the work that we're doing. Any questions? You're on mute.
Yes. I like that it at least on my computer, if I start to talk, it notifies me, you're on mute, you need to turn yourself off. I have two questions, I think, if I remember correctly. One is that obviously being very limited by the pandemic and obviously having, in my opinion, that manifest most of all in terms of not doing town hall meetings at all. I mean, to me, that seems like the biggest area of the planned assessment that was affected by the pandemic. And I say biggest because, as I said, it wasn't done at all, instead of done partially or done differently. But then the other thing is that we were hoping for really large groups of people and lots of discussion in that context, and we didn't get it at all. And so I think that's a problem, but again, nobody's fault but COVID. How do we deal with that, Pat? You know, do we wait and do it later? Do we try to do it digitally? Do we put the entire assessment on hold in a sense? In other words, hear from you in a report as planned, but knowing that there is a sort of, you know, I mean, there's future work regardless, right? It's never like, oh, and now we're done. But, you know, how do we deal with that piece of not having done town hall meetings?
Well, I have two opinions on that. Oftentimes, town hall meetings are simply ways to make the larger group realize we need small meetings. Town hall meetings often are dominated by a particular group of people or by a particular opinion. Someone, let's say me as a Black person says, hey, that just feels wrong to me, that's racist. It can shut down the room. People who might speak up might not. So generally when I do town halls, they allow me to see who's not in the room, who's not speaking with their own voice. At the same time, they can be places of good discussion when people can, you know, share the space. So I do think and would strongly recommend, period, for you all going forward that you would do a town hall every 6 months, period. Just to hear from the larger community. But if we are doing the work correctly and building real relationship, particularly with the Black community, then they will tell us what that need looks like.
Okay, and that leads me to another question relating to what your answer was, which is that that, you know, idea of space not being shared in a way that allows us to tap into hearing from the people we really want to hear from, or that historically we haven't heard from. I mean, obviously, to be very blunt, if we're talking about racial equity and we have a town hall, you know, we want to hear in large part and as much as possible from Black people, but that doesn't necessarily mean that white people aren't allowed to speak, or maybe we could take an extreme action and structure it that way. You know, I just kind of want to raise that idea too, that we could perhaps be very intentional about trying to tap into the groups of people we want to hear from, in terms of just being as close to home as possible with the issues we're talking about, as much of the lived experience as opposed to talking on other people's behalf.
Let me jump in there.
Okay.
Because again, that's where we did 7 town hall meetings when I went to City of Evanston. Between the 7 meetings, we had 400 and some odd people show up. Largely, you had the same group of very vocal people, I mean, by name, the same group of very vocal people who dominated that space. But however, what that allowed not only me, but the other 500 people to see is, okay, we're not hearing the Black and Latino voices. So next meeting is for Spanish speaking only. It's in Spanish speaking only. What we did to reach the Black population, there are pockets of Black people here. The Foster Senior Club is one. Over 100 seniors meet every Wednesday. So we would go to their meetings. So we didn't have to say, hey, white people, you can't speak up. But we do want to hear, and we especially want to capture the authentic stories. I mean, I have 100 different stories. that happened to somebody else. But we're trying to hear what was your experience and how do you want me to fix it, not how do you want us to tell you how to fix it.
That's great. That's really helpful.
Okay.
Thank you for that. And that reminds me, of course, of previous discussions that you and I have had, but I'm so glad to hear that shared publicly. The idea of going to the space where people are gathering that you want to talk to instead of expecting that they know about and show up at some space that's being created all of a sudden. So I think that's really important.
You're talking about any marginalized group. Institutional racism always raises its head when you have a public meeting. Because I'm going to be one of 5 Black people, going to be 13 white people. Nobody's going to listen to what I have to say anyway. So finding people in their spaces, and I mean, we did things like go down. We had one homeless woman who was on a committee with us, and she said, "No, you don't want to go there. You want to go under this bridge at this time because that's when the homeless people leave from Chicago and are from Evanston." So it really is digging deep to find where those voices are.
Yeah, thanks again, Pat. And I think I said I had 2 questions. I don't know if I said them both. I'm kind of blanking out, so I'll just, stop talking for a moment.
Anyway.
What's that?
I said, I'll hang out.
Yeah, Natalie.
May I ask a question?
Of course.
Pat, hi, Pat.
Hi.
You had mentioned that because of COVID, when you had done your walk around the parks, there really wasn't much to see because people weren't out. Now that we've moved into phase 4, and I'm actually out and about at the parks more often, I notice that people are starting to kind of repopulate and get out and be active. Do you think there might be an opportunity to do it again? Or
absolutely.
Okay, because I think we have, especially in the summertime, we have so many people outside and so many people enjoying the parks and the equipment and everything else. And I would love for them to have an opportunity to meet and talk to you. So if there is an opportunity for you to get out again, or if I can help facilitate that for you in some kind of a way.
No, let's talk offline. It's a great idea. Remember when it would get me out of here sometime. But yes, and understand this data collection will go on even beyond the report date. I mean, because the data is what's going to be so important to help you all decide as a district where you're going to go. So that report will be dated and with an end date of August 3rd, but we will continue to collect data and find new ways to do that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you both for talking about that. And it reminds me of something else that I want to talk about too, which is, we've consulted with you, Pat, and we've learned so much from you, and you've also been doing work sort of on our behalf with the assessment and will give us a report. And of course, as we've already established, that's not the end. But in terms of specifically how we move forward, and I'm sure you'll help us with that as part of your report, I'm thinking too that, it was always the goal that you sort of teach us, and then eventually we're doing a lot of this ourselves, the work into the future, that you're not holding our hand in perpetuity. And so I would just want to flesh that out further in this context, which is to say that in terms of data collection, perhaps it doesn't have to be you collecting that data forever. I love the idea of now that we see more people out, doing sort of a second phase of data collection or something, but I'm talking way into the future, sort of if we could develop ways that we are constantly reaching out to the community, specifically about racial equity, such that it's very clear that at any point in time, we want to hear from people. It's sort of like a comment box that would be at a restaurant or anywhere, give us some feedback right here. If you make it literally very visible somehow physically or on the internet or both, I think that might be a way that we can kind of continually.
Well, that is the next step for you all, is to decide where you want to go. My recommendations will show you how to now embed this. In other words, begin to take it off my plate and embed it in your policies so that you have something in front of you that directs the board, that directs the staff to do this, this, and this, to hold this READY committee accountable, to a procedure, a process to hear complaints or concerns, a way to hold town hall meetings on a consistent basis. So that would be the next step for you all, is helping you to figure out how to embed that into all that you're already doing.
Great. Anybody else have any questions or comments for Pat? And if not, I would say that just to finalize the READY committee update, as I think it's already been said, we're finishing our training tomorrow. So of the 6-hour training that we were doing, we're finalizing that tomorrow. And then, as Pat said, we will hear from her in August. Oh, I guess I did have one more question for you, Pat. And
Yes.
obviously, you know, we already plan to hear from you in August. We can absolutely just go ahead with that. I'm just kind of wondering, I'm sorry, there was a bug on my neck. I'm sorry to flip around like a horse over here. I'm wondering if the time that you anticipate your report taking and questions and discussion and such, if it would be so significant that perhaps it warrants a special meeting. And I know that it's always, you know, a schedule concern for us to schedule special meetings. And at the same time, I also know that there's definitely a collective interest in our monthly board meetings not going super long. And I just don't want to see that your report of the assessment happens sort of late in a meeting. I want to give it the time it deserves, in other words. And so if you think that it would, you know, do best in a special meeting, I'm absolutely open to that. And if you are too, we can sort of talk to the rest of the board, or if you think we stick with August, that's fine.
I think you would definitely, number one, for community purposes, community engagement, if you could have a special meeting, I think it'd be great, sort of a community roundtable, the board having looked at it, the Ready Committee, now being ready to take any questions from that before, I think that would be a great, that would be the best way to handle it.
Okay. Does anybody else want to weigh in on that, if they see a problem with it, or if they like it, or
I like the idea of having a special meeting, because I think that more people will come and be into it if they don't have to sit through a whole board meeting, you know, in terms of time. And so I for one, like that idea.
Okay.
Can I mention? I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry, Pat. I was trying to.
Just a quick mention, that would give the community, because the packet would go out right before the meeting, so the community would also have had their hands down on that report by the time they come to the meeting, and so they could have good questions, and that's the way we should go.
Okay, and then in terms of timing, given that we were planning for August, which is a month from now, would you feel comfortable doing it sooner than that, like the week before? Would you prefer that it's the week after? And then also, I'm opening it up to anybody if they know of any direct schedule conflicts they would have.
And hang on.
We also don't have to answer that question right now, but I just thought I would see if you had, had a
Okay, perfect.
Okay, so perhaps let's talk to Natalie, I think, and just see if we can have her help us with the logistics of scheduling the special meeting, and that way we can just handle that outside of here. Is that good?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Natalie, sorry, I talked over you there.
Just said, yep, that's good. I'll take care of it.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, thank you, Dr. Effiam, and we are all really looking forward to hearing your report from your assessment. And looking forward to finishing up the training tomorrow as well. That brings us to old business, and we have as the first item, just lingering from previous discussions, the barbecue. We did take action on that last month, but we didn't finalize the entirety of what we had talked about. I don't really know where we're at with this, so I'll ask Matt if he wanted to continue with this, or if we're tabling this.
So I don't have anything tonight. The one thing I would like to do going forward is to clarify the language in the ordinance regarding grilling, barbecuing, and fires. I don't know that it's essential business. I explicitly didn't put it on the agenda tonight. So I don't have anything tonight. And I would even fold that conversation about ordinance revisions into what's marked on our agenda as 7B, updated policies. So my one question would be for Mr. Rosinski. Do you have anything that you feel that the board needs to do? And if not, I'm willing to take this off the agenda going forward.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
I think the Cayman West issue is still out there. And then I have to do a reservation form. So until minor things like that are settled, the reservation form will change, which is not a big deal. And the new waivers have to go on new forms with the COVID-19 stuff in it. So that's basically where we sit in the office.
And I would say that those would fall under your discretion, in my opinion. I don't know that you need any board direction for that, Brian.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I don't think you need any board direction for that, do you? Any action from the board?
Well, Cayman West is still out there. I
Oh,
don't need any other board direction.
I thought that was resolved last month.
It was partially resolved, I think. I don't know. Anybody can help me with that. I ordered 5 bins for 5 parks, but Cayman West and signage, I'm sorry, signage. But I don't have anything ready.
Right. Signage is unresolved.
What's that?
Signage is unresolved.
Signage is very close to being resolved.
So then maybe we'll keep it on the agenda and go over signage at the next board meeting?
I think so.
Right. I don't
Okay.
know further than.
Okay, thank you, Matt and Brian. I would say, just to wrap that up then, that if the board could please review what was supplied most recently regarding barbecue policy. And so it was multiple pages. Some of it referred to signage. Some of it referred to just what would be sort of the policy itself, which would be on the website. I don't think anything in writing talked about what's in the ordinance. So that's a piece we need to sort of flesh out as just simply as to what it says now and any changes that need to be made, which I think perhaps if you're comfortable, Commissioner Mitchell, you would supply those suggestions, or any of us could. I mean, when you say that the ordinance—
I'm happy to do it. There's like 2 things we might need to strike from the ordinance or revise. I would suggest doing it very cleanly, not adding a lot of additional language, just taking out any language that conflicts with our current policy.
I think that's pretty straightforward, and I definitely think that the policy should be, in clear accordance with the ordinance. And so if changes are necessary, we'll go ahead and make them. I think it should be pretty simple. As we've talked about in the past, striking something is like quicker and easier, right, and cheaper than rewriting. But we'll do what we need to do.
Right. So I'll do that for the next meeting. I will bring a draft of ordinance revisions.
Okay, great. And that way, if everybody can just review what was already presented, we can come ready to have any suggestions of changes or to approve things that we haven't yet approved. I think that would be great to just finalize that and move on. Especially since we've ordered the hot coals, I think it really begs to be finished up so that everything's just clear and done. Okay, so then we're moving on. And it's my understanding, Matt, that we are also tabling your discuss update on policies inspired by the IAPD self-assessment, at least for this meeting.
Sure. I would move to table that as non-essential business.
Okay. Do we need to vote on tabling items that are on the agenda?
I don't think so.
Okay. I mean, we already have been clear for a number of meetings in a row here that we're tabling non-essential business. So I think we're just moving ahead with doing that as it applies. So then moving on to old business, item C, discuss and pass the 2020-2021 tentative budget. I'll turn this over to Brian in terms of, one more reminder as to what our dates are here moving forward and what it is that we would hope to achieve tonight.
Okay, 2 things. Tentative means tentative. This is a very, very, very tentative budget. There's a lot of changes. Some might be just minor, there might be big changes, but this is a very tentative budget. Again, I gave you the time frame on how they make those changes, how we make those changes, and when by September we have to pass the levy ordinance. I'm sorry, the appropriation ordinance, and that's pretty much the drop dead date for the budget to become finalized. In this budget, there are some very large items that are in also the report I gave you today about capital improvements over the next 4 or 5 years. The budget is also a $2.4 increase from last year, assuming COVID-19 slows down and takes care of itself. We wrote this budget with that assumption in mind. So in this budget is a copy machine. That's a big item. The stuff I'm going to highlight is different things. It's capital improvement stuff or larger items, not wages in this category or wages in other categories, assuming camps and programs run. New furniture for the office. We're well on our way to getting that finished, but there's more work to be done. The Garage Art Studio second floor, we want to do some work on the walls up there to seal them, so to speak. Board development, we'll be getting in touch with Dr. Effiam and trying to figure out how much we're going to budget for equity for the next year. So we need to do that in the near future. Patricia, Natalie and I will be talking with you. So that number may change, finalize it, hope to finalize it. We're also ordering, the plan is to order some windows for the Garage Art Studio. They're very archaic. Some of them are leaking from heavy rains and weather. Also some windows for 908 Seward. There's some old small windows. We did extensive windows in the years, 3-4 years ago, maybe longer. And most of the windows are in great shape, but there's several that we missed, approximately 7 that need to be changed. The shed, we'd already talked about different times. We need to fix the brick behind the mural on the other 3 walls and paint that a neutral color to match the Garage Art Studio. That's a large item. Cayman West basketball court to be resurfaced. Ridgeville Park has 2 courts, both to be resurfaced, one for multi-purpose use, one for basketball. Those are the large ticket items in this budget. And so, like I said, some of those are on the capital improvement 4 or 5 year plan that I gave you. So that's it in a nutshell. Anybody has any questions, they can throw them out at me. But again, you have time to look this over, mull it over, and make suggestions. One other thing that you should know, come after the August board meeting, typically Gary finalizes the numbers from year ending June 30th. And when he finalizes those numbers, it helps us in categories, for instance, utilities. Let's say we budgeted 10,000 for utilities and we spent 7,500. Are we going to estimate and lower that category, or are we going to anticipate, fuel prices changing, things of that nature? So we will alter some of those categories, usually not very much money, but 1,000 here, 2,000 here, based on the previous year's numbers. That happens in late August after Jerry can close the book. And the reason he can't close the books till after August is there are a few invoices that come in late. There's a Sunrise invoice that just came today for June work over at the Elks Park Garden. That's $2,000. That'll be charged the last year. So it's things of that nature, and payrolls. And, Jerry can talk a little bit about it if he wants, but there's a lot of minor things to be done after approximately after the August board meeting.
Matt.
Brian, I'm looking on page 1 of the tentative budget summary at the bottom. The capital improvement projects fund only shows $6,500 proposed for 2020, 2021. Can you talk to that at all?
Yeah, I didn't hear you. Can you repeat it?
So it seems like a very low number to me. Also,
what category? I'm sorry.
Capital improvement project fund.
Oh yeah, that's just spending for beautification. So
that comes out of the probate.
That comes out of the
estate.
Vonda Haven estate, and that number can easily change. That's what we're talking about. And the other things that I'm going to suggest to you in this budget is when I get a final, not a final, but a tightened up parking lot number and REBA number, that we look at what's available to spend, and those might fall into capital budget items.
Okay.
Parking
So,
lot,
so
of repair.
can I clarify, with it, what's marked as the capital improvement projects fund is just that gift?
That's just the Van de Haven. That's all that is.
Okay. And then the other list I'm seeing, the projected capital improvement list that goes out to 2024. Those are included in the general corporate fund?
Right. Some of the stuff you find on the capital improvement projection will work its way into the normal budget. It's not necessarily going to be money that doesn't come through the normal part of the budget.
Okay. I see those now in kind of sub-line items.
Some of them were highlighted for you. But so let's go to like 2022. There might be an item that just naturally fits into the budget. We're not going to go to our reserves to pay for that. We pay for it in the normal budget if it fits.
Okay, thank you.
Jerry, did you want to chime in on that? It looked like you were ready to speak.
Going to help Mr. Mitchell with the clarification on that. You know, if you look at the general corporate fund, there's a line item CA51 that will have capital improvements to facilities that are in the capital on the general side. And if you look in the recreation fund, RA17 is capital outlays to parks and playgrounds. It's kind of we could do all capital funding through the capital improvement projects fund. It's kind of a haphazard process why we do a project from there versus why we do it out of the corporate fund or the recreation fund. When we do them in the capital improvements fund, we've clearly earmarked that money for capital projects only, and it can't then be reassigned to any other purpose. Whereas if it stays up in the general fund or in the recreation fund, if in the course of the year we decide not to do a project and instead use the money for something else, we've got the flexibility within a year to rework it within a given fund. We still cannot cross fund boundaries. In other words, what's recreation money is recreation money. It can't go anywhere else. It can't be given over to IMRF for it. So.
Jerry, thank you. I have a question though. If we benefit from having those capital improvement funds sort of dispersed throughout the recreation fund and the general fund, why do we even have a capital improvement fund at all? And why do we put some money there? Is that just to make sure that at least that much is definitely getting spent that way?
Well, sometimes projects like the Van den Haven request, that is restricted to capital improvements only by the nature of the bequest. So that makes a lot of sense to have funded into the capital projects improvement fund to keep that money from getting used in any other way. Similarly, when we've taken grants from CDBG or other entities to do major park improvement projects, or it's a project that's going to span multiple years, it can make sense to do it there. And there's no reason we couldn't just say eliminate them in the general and the recreation fund. I can't give you a good reasoning as to why they end up in one place or the other over time, other than just kind of those general comments.
Okay, Dan, I see you. I just wanted to let Jerry have a chance to answer some of those budget questions, and then we'll definitely go to you. Jerry, my other question is, and I'm sorry if I'm not understanding this and everybody else is, when we've talked about using some of our unexpended funds, which have of course accumulated little by little over give or take 30 years, and we've realized when we've looked closer at our bank accounts that we have, you know, in excess of the funds saved up than what is recommended. And then we of course subsequently talked about, okay, well, there's all kinds of capital projects we can do with that excess of unexpended funds. My question is, where exactly does that get accounted for? Is that literally just part of our otherwise normal operating budget, you know, yearly? Or is it sort of considered separately since it is a separate place that we're dipping into for those funds?
it's key to Exhibit A is your clue to all of that. That Exhibit A is a very important page. When I'm talking about using unexpended funds from prior years, or in other words, fund balances, you want to go to Exhibit A and look at the unexpended funds on hand to be applied to appropriations. In the total all funds column right now, we're showing a figure of 30,900. I'm suggesting that number should be significantly higher. Well, in order to get that number higher, we have to plan to spend higher. What this page is doing is it's balancing the sources of income or sources of revenue to the planned expenditure. And they've got to balance. They've got to, the sources of revenue have to match what we're planning to spend. And that's what's going on there. Normally, the match that we're playing there is just what do we think we're going to bring in taxes based upon what PTEL is going to let us do, and what do we think we're going to bring in terms of program revenue, and we say, okay, that's got to equal what our spending is. When we're going to, and I'm getting a message here that my internet connection's unstable. I don't know if I'm dropping out.
We can hear you.
Okay. When when we're going to, so what I'm saying is normally we want to keep those two in balance. And what I'm saying is we've got an opportunity here where we can actually spend more than we have identified revenue sources for, and then it will, the line that it'll appear on is that unexpended funds to be applied to appropriations line. The caution, there's two things that have to be carefully considered before ever putting a number on that line. Number one is the thing that you're spending money on that you don't have a revenue source for, is it a one-time expense or an ongoing program expense of some sort, or an ongoing operational expense? If it's ongoing, you're going to have a problem because your savings are eventually going to run out, and now how are you going to pay for it? You're going to have to cut staff, you're going to have to cut programs, you're going to have to cut something if you can't identify a revenue source. Secondly, and so it's always better that if it's capital projects, that's a way to do it. Secondly, you've got to first also look at we don't want to, it's not just run our savings down to zero, it's what is our fund balance policy? How many months of operating funds do we want to have? And again, you can't look at it overall, you've got to look at it fund by fund. How much IMRF money, how much pension money do we need to plan for? How much Social Security money do we need to plan for? How much liability money do we need to plan for? How many months worth of that do we want to have in reserve? And only deplete our balances to the point that they equal the reserves. We've, in many years past, been in a position where we had insufficient reserves, and so we were deliberately extremely frugal about letting a number get on this line because we were trying to increase our reserves and get up to a good level. We have accomplished that and exceeded that probably. I mean, we don't have a definitive set policy what that number is, but by all indicators, we're in a very strong place with our balances, and we can deplete it. And we're going to go even stronger this fiscal year because of the amount of unspent appropriation money we've got. And so I'm encouraging, now we don't have to spend it all in 1 year either. Like with the Vandenhaven request, we could say, hey, we take that and spend $65,000 in 1 year, or we have a deliberate strategic plan, we're going to spend it over some period of time. And on that one, the $6,500 that's in there is a part of a plan to deplete that money over a 10-year time period. If we find some projects where we speed it up and we do it purposefully, fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But as long as we're just very thoughtful about how we do that. The key is that line right there, the unexpended funds on hand.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. I have a couple quick questions. I hope they're quick questions for you, but I think I'll go to Dan first since he's been waiting to talk.
Brian? Brian?
I can hear you.
Oh, good. My question is on the equity amount that we are budgeting, does that fall into the board development activities? Because if I recall correctly, last fiscal year, we wanted about 14,000 in it, and we were thinking we would have a similar amount this next year. If I heard you right, you were saying you were going to meet with Pat to talk some about that. Is that correct? We're going to keep it about the same as last year?
Well, right now it's in the budget at the same number. I don't know if that's high. I don't know if that's low. But Natalie and I will contact Pat. We'll talk about what's upcoming in the 2021 year and what we might need to have in that fund, more or less. We just don't know that number. It's hard to predict right now without a conversation with Pat and Natalie.
And right now in our budget that we're looking at, where would that fall? What category?
It's in, hold on one second.
Is that board development?
It's in CA 21. If you go to page 3 of the detail, you can see it as a line item detail.
And what's the amount on that line item detail?
14,000.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so Jerry, I have a couple questions, like I said, and then I also wanted to really quickly, just sort of bullet point style, issue some of my recommendations or ideas or suggestions or what I'd like to see in terms of changes to the budget. This is so tentative that I'm just throwing them out there. We don't have to discuss further. I just want to get it on the record, some of the changes that I see being good changes to make. So first to Jerry, when we're looking at Exhibit A, just to finish, for my sake, answering that question that I asked a moment ago, I do see the $30,900 in unexpended funds on hand to be applied to appropriations. First of all, correct me if I'm wrong, you said that you would recommend that that $30,900 be larger than that?
Yes.
Okay, and do you have a rough estimate of how high, given what we talked about previously of how much money we have to spend to get back in line with what our reserves should be? And basically, it sounds like you're not necessarily recommending we spend the everything that's in excess in 1 year, but that's sort of the goal, and maybe that's where the 4 or 5 year plan comes from?
Yes. I would have to go and look last month's report to have a number that's a longer term look at it. But in the short run, in my financial reports tonight, you saw that our revenue over our appropriations is $81,000. Now that's going to be subject to some revisions, but at that moment in time, at that snapshot moment, that number is $81,000. That's the amount of money it would appear that this year we are going to be turning back into our fund balances because we didn't spend it. So that money, I think, should pretty immediately be spent in the coming year to not make our balance issue even greater than it already is. So that's why I come up with the number that 81,000 is what I'd like to see that number be, because that would kind of keep us flat. Now, the revisions you approved in the bills tonight, I didn't have the benefit of seeing the bills when I wrote my report. You have a large number of capital expenses that happened in the latter part of June and early July that are going to be processed as last fiscal year. And you may have some more in the August bills coming up as well. The other thing is that we have the accrual on the liability insurance payments, which is usually a big number, something in the $15,000 to $20,000 range. And we're going to have some payroll accruals, which are often in the $20,000 range. But this year they won't be because the camps have been canceled. Point is, I've got some big numbers that are swinging back and forth that are going to affect that. It might end up reducing it to a 60,000 recommendation by the time all is said and done from what I can see so far. But we're so comfortably well positioned that even even then I would still be comfortable at 80. So I think for planning purposes for Brian moving forward into August and September with the ordinance, the number to aim for is something around 80,000.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. That's great to have that number too. The other thing I wanted clarification on, and again, hopefully a quick answer here. Unexpended funds on hand. What do we mean exactly by on hand to be applied to blah blah blah?
Fund balances.
Okay, but the 30,900 is of course not the total in that category. It's the total that at least as of this sheet, Exhibit A, that at that point in time, that's the amount that would go there. But of course, we're going to increase it as we just talked about.
Well, I mean, instead of charging the taxpayers taxes, instead of bringing money in from fees, we're going to go to our fund balances and take the money out of our fund balances and spend it. We don't normally do that.
Right. Okay.
We'll do small amounts to balance this page every year. There's always a smaller number there, having to do with the way the calculations every year after that August meeting happen. But they're not usually terribly large, significant numbers. This year and possibly for the next couple of years until we get our fund balances where we think they ought to be, it might be a pretty significant number we put in there.
Okay, and then just one more point of clarification on that. Let's say for the sake of argument, we are upping that to 81,000. What would your estimate be as to what percentage of the total that we need to spend of our excess? What percentage of the total is that 81,000?
I don't know that answer off the top of my head.
Okay, but we can look at your report from last month and just kind of compare to what those 6 months amounted to and get a sense of that. Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, and the tricky part talking about the 81,000, I'm talking, that's a number of all funds, and we've got to now break it down by fund. So how much is in corporate, how much is in recreation, and so on. Because the funds are restricted, it's like what we can't do is like say, take it all out of corporate, can't take it all out of CA 50, whatever the number was, 50, yeah, CA 51, if there's not sufficient funds in the general fund to do that with. So it's a little, I've given a simplistic answer for the purposes in the meeting. In my ongoing discussions with Brian, I'll have to break that 81,000 down, but this is how much to aim for in corporate, this is how much to do in general capital projects.
Okay, Brian.
The last major project we did where we used some unexpended funds was Lighter Park Play Circuit, the far west corner.
And do you remember the figure, just for reference, of what we spent on that?
I'd have to go back and look, but they were semi-significant in our world.
I think probably in the ballpark of 20,000 is what I might remember. 15, 20,000.
Was that fully funded with unexpended funds, or was it partially budget? Can you split things in half like that?
It was mostly funded from grants and other sources, or actually even out of the budget. But we did use some unexpended funds. I mean, same thing when we did Brummel Park.
Okay, and then before I keep talking, does anybody else have any questions, issues, suggestions? No? Oh, okay. I just wanted to say in relation to our budget, and then also in relation to our projected capital improvement list that we got from Brian, and thank you, Brian, for giving us this like starter list. It's sort of a wish list of, it's not a bad problem to have, that we have some extra money that we can throw towards things that we need, maybe a little bit sooner than we would absolutely have to do them, or maybe some of these things are just improvements that we can make that we otherwise wouldn't have been able to do if we didn't have the extra funds to work with. But just some of my quick notes. I'm sorry?
I want to stress, because I don't know that everybody's fully grasped what I'm saying. One of the options you have in this upcoming budget, because our funding situation is as good as it is you could, as a benefit to the community, you could consider the idea of perhaps not charging as much as we normally would for programs as kind of just a COVID dividend, if you will, back to the community. So if we ran programs and they cost us 80,000, and we would normally charge program fees to cover that of 80,000, you could do it for 40,000, run a $40,000 shortfall in revenue, and fill that gap by drawing down the fund balance. So that's a philosophical discussion, I think, for the commissioners to have, whether that's something you would want to consider doing for the community or not.
Okay, well, that reminds me, Jerry, that I also wanted to suggest that I think, as we sometimes do, we should schedule a special meeting to talk about the budget. And in terms of the trajectory of which months, you know, are solidifying that concrete, as we've talked about previously, and we're just starting that right now, when do you recommend, Jerry and Brian, that we would schedule a special budget meeting? And of course, if we needed to have multiple meetings, we could, but if we're going to shoot for just one, when is it best for that?
Probably pretty quick. I mean, by the time we have that review meeting after the August board meeting, so late August is when I should be in a position to issue the final figures for the end of June. Once that meeting takes place, the concrete is pretty firm at that point. I mean, you've only got one more board meeting after that to vote on it, so you don't have a lot of room to move. So I would say either that meeting itself should be a special meeting for everyone to participate in the discussion, or even before the August board meeting.
Okay. The budget's kind of a big deal, so I personally think it makes sense to have a special budget meeting at least once a year, you know, at the time that you all, Jerry and Brian, recommend that we do that. Brian, what were you going to say?
Just giving you a heads up, I go on vacation the first week of August, so I'll be out of town.
Okay, just that week?
Yes.
Okay. So actually, if I can ask Natalie to help once again with those logistics of scheduling a special budget meeting. Jerry, would it make sense, given that our meeting would be the second week and Brian's out of town the first week, that we shoot for like the third week of August? Is that a good time?
That's a fine time. What I'm thinking is, and I'm pulling up my calendar here to look. It may as well be the week of the 24th. It may as well just be that final review meeting that we do. Just tackle it all in one big discussion. Otherwise, what we'd be talking, a lot of times commissioners have wanted to sit in on that review meeting, and when there have been enough commissioners that want to participate, that it then triggers open meeting, we've had to make that the special board meeting. I don't know if there's that level of interest in doing that this year. If there is, then it's going to be that last week of August that meeting would likely take place. So you'd be talking about having, if you did it in a separate meeting, you'd be talking about having 3 weeks of board meetings in a row. And I'm saying eliminate one of them and just get it all over with at one meeting is a suggestion.
Okay, I think we'll work those details out by email with Natalie, and each commissioner can weigh in as to whether they'll be coming, and if so, we'll factor in everybody's schedules who wants to attend. And like you said, if it's only 2 or fewer board members who want to come to a special meeting, it doesn't need to be an open meeting. Otherwise, it will be, and that's fine. I just very much would like to be there myself. And I think instead of using a bunch of time at the meeting tonight, I think we can, I'll talk more about some of the questions and ideas that I had. I'm going to save it then. I'm going to save it for a later time. And that being said, unless anyone else has anything to say or ask on this agenda item of the tentative budget, we do have to pass it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Pat McCourt. Oh, Pat, you're muted.
Sorry. Brian, will you be getting more concrete numbers for some of these capital items, such as the parking lot and the basketball courts?
Yes. Very close on Reba Park numbers, but again, just follow me on this conversation. the Reba Park numbers, then, you know, we're going to pass a number, but then the neighbors need to be involved in the planning process. That's number one. Number two, the parking lot is going to be $74,000 to $78,000, but I will get a firmer number from some contractors.
How do we know it's going to be that expensive? So you must have an estimate already.
Well, no, it's basically $10 a square foot, and it's I can't remember the amount of square footage, but if you divide 74,000 by $10, it gives you the square footage of the parking lot. That's why it's a projected number, an approximate number. You always can run into problems or details that you don't anticipate. For one, who's going to paint the parking lot? Number two, are they going to supply parking blocks? I already have that in the budget. So little things like that, but I will definitely have that number before the August board meeting, the parking lot.
Okay.
But that's how I came up with the $74,000 to $78,000.
Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Because I saw Pat's hand and then I wasn't looking again. Any other questions? Okay. Like I said, I mean, I think this is a great start, this projected capital improvement list. But I think, you know, a more in-depth focus on the budget when we have time to do just that is kind of the next step as far as I see it. I mean, again, I don't totally understand why we're passing a tentative budget if it's going to have so many changes coming to it, possibly.
It's the law.
Okay.
It's simple as that. It's the
That's
law.
the answer.
They want to make sure you're working in progress.
Right. And then we've looked at it and we're moving to the next step. Fair enough.
I think it's kind of like we're in a strange period in July, August, and September because we're spending money and we have no budget. So
Right.
this is kind of like it's like, okay, well, it's not like we're spending it without a plan. We've got a plan. It's still in the works, kind of thing. That's kind of conceptually what I think the law is trying to cover here.
Yeah. Okay. Then to pass it, we're going to do the roll call vote, and I will ask Julie to do that for us.
I'll make a motion. We pass the very tentative budget for fiscal 2020 to 2021.
Matthew Mitchell seconds the motion.
That was Pat McCord.
All right, Debbie Braun,
Yes.
Coin,
Yes.
Eanes,
Yes.
McCourt, Pat McCourt.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And Mitchell.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Julie. So that concludes old business. New business, we have an item from Commissioner Coyne noted as discussed dissolution of the Ridgeville Park District. I'm gonna turn the floor over to Commissioner Coyne.
In light of us trying to keep our topics to the essential, I realize now that this is non-essential. And if the board would like, I could just wait till August to talk about it.
Thanks for that consideration, Dan. I was thinking the same thing and had given it some thought, in fact, and decided to not suggest that we table this because I think I speak for the entire board when I say that we would very much like to hear from you on this agenda item now as opposed to later.
Oh, okay.
Matt, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Did you want to say something as well?
I agree with you. I also think that there's people who are here tonight to hear this discussion and have sat
Okay.
through the first 2 hours.
Okay, very good. Yeah, I won't be long. Really for years, for the last 8 years since I've been involved with Ridgeville, I've been learning how Ridgeville works and trying to be a part of that. But one piece that has always been confusing to me is what the law is or the rules are if the community, the voters, want to dissolve the park district. I've heard different interpretations, anywhere from if that happens, the money goes and the park district goes and the land goes to the school districts, to everything going to the city. And I honestly didn't know what the law was. I do appreciate very much Commissioner Mitchell giving me some advice on how to find laws that are public records. And that's how I found this particular one on dissolution of Ridgeville. But I'm not an attorney. And as I read it a few times, I kept scratching my head. It just didn't seem quite clear to me exactly what it was saying. Also, I took the advice from board members the last few months as I tried to bring up this topic and discuss it, is to do research on my own. And although the library's been closed in Evanston because of COVID, a librarian was able to help me a little bit in accessing some of the archives and history records of the Chicago Tribune and other periodicals and journals of Evanston. And what I learned was pretty interesting. And I could send copies to Natalie to distribute, but it's just different Chicago Tribune articles that I found that talked about different voter initiatives over the years at Ridgeville to dissolve the Park District. And what was kind of interesting to me that stood out is that some of the push was actually coming from the president of the board of Ridgeville. We named a park after Mr. Kamen, and Mr. Kamen served on Ridgeville board for I think 17 years. And the unanimous decision from the board at that point in time was to have the voters look at a referendum to close the district. And another referendum that happened also with 100% support from a different board group of Ridgeville Park District members, but also 17 out of the 18 city council alder people at City Hall, back then we had 18, voted in support of merging Ridgeville with Evanston Park District. So that said, that helped me a little bit through that research, but I'm still not clear on what this law really means. And I did try to delineate what I thought were 6 different points that might make it easy to answer. There might be a simple answer to them. And I don't know if Brian or Charles could help on that, but could you guys have a copy of those 6 questions? And Brian, did you get a chance to look at those?
Dan, I sent your request out.
Brian, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I have to respond to Dan first. I have to go back a step here. Why is it that you think that the legal counsel for the Park District or that our executive director needs to answer those questions? Because it's my understanding that the dissolution of the Park District would happen via a referendum getting onto a ballot because somebody chooses to collect the required number of signatures to do so, and that it's put to the voters. It's my understanding, again, unless I'm wrong about this, that there's no role for our board to play in this matter. And I, for one, would not want to see us dissolve and feel that way very strongly, as I've articulated in the past, and I will again if needed. And so I'm what I was hoping to hear from you tonight is why you're bringing this up in the first place and whether or not you're advocating for this, and if so, why? So can we start there? Because we don't even need to go into consulting with our legal counsel and answering those questions that, as you yourself said, you're able to go and do that research yourself, or anyone else would be as well if they would like to see a referendum get on the ballot. I'm just not even sure why we're talking about this, and I'd love to hear from you about why you think we are.
Well, I think by the record of Ridgeville Park District, that board members have been involved before when the community was asking these questions, and it actually came from the board itself. So I think part of the answer to your question about why board members would be involved in understanding this is because of our history. That's exactly how it happened. But as far as answering your question about, whether I'm interested, the jury's out on me. No, I'm not. I don't have any effort. There's no group that's pushing this, although I will say that in the last 8 years that I've been involved with Ridgeville, the question always comes up and I just don't have an answer for it. And it's usually by people who are concerned about their taxes, and people aren't sure about how Ridgeville works, and they ask questions about why don't we merge. And my thought is especially in light of our COVID crisis that's having an economic impact on a lot of our constituents through paying losing jobs and losing income, and also the higher tax bills that came, that there's a sort of a perfect storm, in my opinion, that I think it's smart at least to have some facts down before the next round of elections happen, which will be happening between now and the spring of 21. And I do believe that part of our job as commissioners is to represent all of our constituents, even those who think that it's a good idea to dissolve, and at least at a minimum, to have some answers for them that are factual. And having our corporate counsel giving us facts in ahead of time, I think is just prudent. It's also in our legal best interest to know what the rules are, because if something like this were to present itself, I assume our attorney would have to weigh in on this, on the validity of the referendum.
Okay, thank you, Dan. You answered some of my questions. If I could just get a little bit of clarity on one in particular, which is, I'm just going to ask it again to be explicit. Do you personally think the Ridgeville Park District should dissolve?
Oh, I told you earlier that the jury's still out on that. That's something I've been debating the last 10 years since I've gotten involved with Ridgeville, and the last 8 years as well since I've been trying to serve on the board. So to me, the jury's still out. But for me, one of the biggest unknown questions was how this rule worked. And I think that's fair to know what the answer is, just what happens if this were to happen.
Okay, thanks. And I just want to respond to something you said, and perhaps it turns into a question here as well. You've mentioned a number of times that people in the community have brought this up. I've been on this board for my second time now for a little over a year since I was elected in April. I was also on the board for 4 years from 2009 to 2013. So in those 5+ years, I have literally only heard this brought up twice. Once is by you right now and preceding this in 2 different contexts over the past 3 months. The only other time was when we had to appoint a commissioner to an open seat, and we received applications to do so. And one of those applicants, when asked why he wanted to be on the Ridgeville board, wrote that it was because he thought we shouldn't exist and he wanted to dissolve us. That didn't make us want that particular person to serve on our board, because we felt as a board at that time, and I feel still as a commissioner, that our purpose as commissioners is to uphold, protect, preserve, perpetuate all of the great things that Ridgeville is. We're not here because we think we suck. We're here because we think we're great. And there have been many things that you have said and actions you have taken that have made it seem that you feel very differently in that regard. So that's why I'm asking you to be clear with us if you think we should dissolve. And it sounds like you don't know, and that's fine. But again, I'm going to reiterate another question. Why are we talking about this then?
Could I hear from Brian, because that was, and our attorney, because that was really all I wanted to know. I don't mean to debate this, and I'm not prepared to debate it, but at another time, I'd be happy to. I just want clarification of what this law means.
Dan, I can't give you clarification. I sent your memo out or your request out on Monday, July 6th, and got feedback from at least 3 commissioners not to spend time or instruct Charles to investigate at this particular time because it was a hypothetical situation.
Charles, could you answer my questions?
I can't answer your questions unless I spend time researching the law and looking what the statutes are and any secondary sources that provide guidance. Without doing that, I can't answer your questions with any degree of confidence.
Have you ever looked at this before?
Other than, I perused the statute at some point when you mentioned it before, but no, and I've never been involved in a situation where a park district has dissolved.
Is that something, if a petition was put onto the ballot, or at least a petition that was given to our board, is that something you feel like our corporate counsel should be aware of to know if the process is legal?
Yeah, I mean, if that happened, then I would expect the board would want to know something about it. and they would ask me to do the work on that. But at this point, nobody's asked me to do it.
Oh, I have, Charles, but I don't think you have done it.
Dan, I understand what you're saying, but I've been specifically instructed that I'm only supposed to do work when I get it from Brian or from the president of the board. I can't do it otherwise.
Well, then I guess we're stuck, because I don't think anybody knows the answer to my questions unless Matt Mitchell. I know you've looked at this a few times. Do you have an opinion on what the answers might be on these 6 questions about the law?
No, I haven't. I mean, I have opinions, but I haven't prepared answers to these questions. I'm happy to sit down with you and talk it through, but I haven't done it.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay, great. So I'd like to chime in on just a few other things. Dan, you had an article put in Evanston Now about dissolving the park district, and you were quoted in that article as citing some reasons that either that you think it should happen or where you'd like to see the money go. You cited the amount of money in our reserves, and I think you said that you thought it would be great if our money that's in our reserves would go to reparations. Could you please supply us with a little bit of a sense of what it is that makes you think that that would be a possible outcome if we were to dissolve?
A couple things. One is I don't write articles for Evanston Now or anybody else, so I didn't put any article anywhere. But the media can write about what happens at Ridgeville, and that's on, that's the Fourth Amendment, or rather the fourth pillar of our democracy. But as far as answering your question about where the money goes, I don't know the law. It's part of the questions. I don't know where the money would go.
Okay, great. So it seems a little confusing then that you would get into I don't want to call them a newspaper. I'm not quite sure what to call Evanston Now, to be honest with you, but a news entity. You would make a statement that you would like to see money go to a very specific purpose that's being discussed nationally right now, and you have no reason to give us for why you think that that's possible or likely or how it would happen. So I'm just kind of
Martha,
confused.
it's clear as a bell. I don't think you're listening well. One of the questions is clarifying if a dissolution referendum were passed by Evanston voters, we have no choice. We lose our authority as a board, and then either that money goes to the school districts or the city. My interpretation is it seems like it goes to the city, and it'd be up to the city on what to do with the extra money. And in the context of reparations, that was just one idea.
Okay, sure. So thanks for clarifying that you have no reason to believe that there is a likelihood that that money would end up in reparations. I appreciate that clarification. I also just want to share that I have talked to some people at the city, and just loosely off the record, I've been told that they would not want our land, and that if it did fall into their hands, it would absolutely cost the taxpayers more for them to maintain our facilities and our land in the exact same way that we do. It would cost more. One reason is that they have to hire for union wages, and we do not. And so for that reason alone, it's actually going to cost more if and when the Ridgeville Park District assets were to end up in the city's hands. And I think we can all agree that there's just no way to know what would happen if it ended up in the school district's hands. And it's my understanding, perhaps I understand this process a little bit better even than you do at this point. It's my understanding that whoever would get the signatures to put this referendum on the ballot would actually be the one that decides whether they put it to Ridgeville voters only or whether they put it to the whole city. So I believe, and again, I'm not an expert and I don't want to spend taxpayer dollars consulting with our legal expert, but it sounds like that's actually how that would go. The person who gets it on the ballot by collecting the required number of signatures would decide whether it goes to the city or to Ridgeville. And it would be interesting to see if the entire city wants to pay even more to have the city take over Ridgeville's facilities and parks or not. My guess is that they won't, but I guess we won't know that until somebody gets it on the ballot. I personally feel like I'm done discussing this. I think I see Matt Mitchell's hand up.
We move on.
Yes,
Have a motion to move on. Matthew Mitchell.
Could I make a motion now to not spend any Ridgeville funds on the issue of dissolution, and to table any further discussions by this board on dissolutions indefinitely.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, so to be clear, that's two separate motions. Are we going to vote on them separately or all as one? I think we might have to vote separately, Charlie.
Well, I think the first motion, there is no money being spent on it. So, I mean, I suppose you can make that motion if you want to, but it seems unnecessary.
But I just like it for the future.
That's fine. I mean, I'm just pointing that out.
Okay.
I appreciate the motion because it very, very much will give clarity as to how each of us as commissioners feel on that particular point about legal dollars, taxpayer dollars being spent in that legal way. I think we had a motion and a second, so we'll go to Julie for a roll call vote. But Charlie, do we?
Well, we're not discussing.
Sorry, you missed discussion. You missed discussion.
Okay, sure. Let's move to discussion on both of those motions then.
I think this is not a good idea because it hamstrings the Park District from using their legal counsel to discuss dissolution when dissolution could be affecting the Park District. I think it's too broad, I think it's too vague, and I think it hamstrings the Park District and the commissioners from using their legal counsel when they need legal counsel.
As far as
I'm sorry, Pat McCord is next.
But the point is on the pre-discussion of dissolution. If it
That's not the motion.
If it gain, okay, then I want to clean it up because if it comes to the front that somebody engages in a program to dissolve Ridgeville, we would then spend money to protect Ridgeville and preserve Ridgeville. So therefore, I meant from the discussion, hypothetical, what if process that Dan or Commissioner Coyne has proposed here. When he doesn't have answers to questions, that's the process I want to eliminate any further discussions and expenditures of any legal funds in that process, not in the potential future if it was necessary to defend Ridgeville.
Okay, so
if I could, I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah.
Sure.
Commissioner McCord, are you saying you just don't want funds spent on legal fees in support of dissolution? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Okay.
I would suggest that you phrase the motion that way because I think it'll be easier for Brian and myself to understand what I can be told to do or not do.
Well, can I ask you a question as well, Pat? Given that this motion could be viewed as either changing or redundant, depending on interpretation of what Charlie had said we had already established, because I do remember at a previous meeting when people were calling into question sort of exorbitant legal fees that were on our monthly bills that we were approving. We talked about, well, wait a second, can anyone just call Charlie whenever they want and talk about whatever they want? And there was consensus that that was not going to be the case moving forward. I can't remember if there was a motion and an actual vote, but we definitely did establish that unless Brian initiates it or the president initiates it, and of course, as president, I'll go ahead and say that I would not be initiating legal fees just because of something I want, but on behalf of the board as a whole. And that's actually why I had thought, and I haven't made a motion as such, but we're in discussion here of your motion. I was thinking of that, you know, to make it even more democratic, so to speak, that to initiate legal fees that would relate to some new issue that a commissioner chooses to initiate, there would maybe just need to be a majority of the board that thinks that's a good idea. That would mean that any new legal expenditures could be, you know, suggested. A motion would be made. People would vote. If at least three people agree that that's a good way to spend some legal dollars, then we move forward with it. If we don't have a majority, I mean, that says something to me that not 3 people of 5 agree that that's a necessary expenditure. So To me, that may be more broad, and having consensus is what we should be striving for, as opposed to striking specific topics, because as we might predict, we might have to strike another specific topic and another specific topic. I don't really want to go there. Matt, did you want to go next?
I guess I don't understand what you were just saying, but I don't think we should limit our use of our legal counsel by a majority vote. I think we have a policy. The policy works well. The policy worked well in this instance. So there's no reason to make it more difficult than it is right now to consult our legal counsel when we need legal counsel.
What are you citing as our existing policy?
That no individual commissioner asks our attorney questions and generates legal fees, that all those questions either go through the executive director or through the president. That's happened since I've been on the board.
I agree that that was my understanding of what our policy is. I don't know if we have that in writing. I don't know if we voted on it. I think that it would probably be wise to make that super clear as per a vote, as per it being in writing. But if everyone is in consensus that that is where we're already at, I think we don't need something specific beyond that. But Pat, you did make two motions there. So what was it again?
Well, the second part of the motion was that this board indefinitely suspend and table any further discussions on dissolving.
And
Okay.
I seconded that. So I'll second that one. And the other one, we're not gonna,
Well,
right?
he would have to strike that first motion, I think, if we're going to vote, so that we're.
I did. My motion is, that's been stricken,
Okay.
and the motion is what I just said.
Okay, so any other discussion on that before we vote?
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Dan, I heard your voice first.
Charles, I have a constitutional question. It sounds like the motion on the table is to limit my constitutional rights to bring up a new topic in the future. Is that your understanding?
I'm not sure what constitutional rights you're referring to. What they're purporting to do is to table certain discussions regarding a topic indefinitely. I don't think, as a member of the board, that you have a constitutional right to avoid that.
Maybe I'm using the wrong language, but I thought as an elected commissioner and our board rules, I had the right to bring up any new topic and get it on the agenda. You know, as long as there's open meetings law met.
So, you know, I'd have to look at Robert's Rules of Order to be sure, but my interpretation is that you would not be able to bring up a topic of dissolution without getting a board vote on allowing you to bring that topic up. That may seem circuitous in some respect, but the board can always change its mind on a topic, and you would have to ask the board to change its mind on bringing that topic up. And if
So
you had a
Charles-
second and a majority, then that's what would happen on the motion.
And Charles, what you're proposing then is that for future references, anytime there's a motion to exclude any topic for board discussion, if there's a majority that vote for that, any topic could be nullified.
I'm not proposing anything. I'm telling you that, yes, you're correct. This board can decide today that X is not going to happen, and then next month, this board can decide we've changed our mind and X can happen.
And in the meantime, a minority voice has no right to discuss it during the board meeting, is what you're saying.
The board controls its own agenda, and if the board has rules on the agenda and it doesn't allow you to bring it up, then you can't bring it up.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so Charlie, not to be redundant, if I missed something just now while I was reviewing Robert's rules, so that I could be clear, it is, according to Robert's rules, a perfectly permissible motion that somebody would not just table something, but table indefinitely. if that were a contradiction of constitutional rights, why would that be a permissible action per Robert's rules?
Yeah. I'm not going to get into that debate with you. I agree with you that Robert's rules would allow you to do that. I don't think there's any constitutional rights involved. I don't think we need to go further than that. But it would be, somebody could ask the board to put something back on the agenda. And if they got a second and a vote, it would go back on the agenda. But that's all, speculation on the future. You could pass this motion today, and that means that somebody could not just put something on new business and have it discussed at a future board meeting, the way we have been operating.
Thank you, Charlie. So I have a question for you, Dan. You've said a number of times that you don't know if you want the Ridgeville Park District. I'm sorry?
I was waiting to talk.
Oh, I had not seen your hand. Go ahead, Matt.
So if we're never going to talk about dissolving the Park District again, I would like to list the reasons why I think dissolving the Park District is a bad idea. First, I think that local control matters. I think that Ridgeville is more responsive to the needs of the south end of Evanston than is City Hall. Number two, I think we have great employees. We have 4 full-time employees who do an excellent job. They'd be next to irreplaceable. They also deserve to have long-term stability in their job. They made a commitment to us, and I feel we as a board should honor that commitment to them. 3, this board has a history of being admirably fiscally responsible. In terms of any other government entity I've ever been around, this is the most fiscally responsible board I've ever seen. One cannot say the same for the city of Evanston. We are also going into a couple of rough budget years for the city of Evanston, and they don't exactly have their ducks in a row. So I think now particularly is a bad time to cede the Park District over to Evanston. Along those lines, Evanston doesn't have an independent park district. Most of Illinois does have independent park districts that are independent taxing bodies so that their budgets can't get cut during lean times. And so during this time is a lean time. It's a particularly bad time to dissolve the park district and send it back to the city of Evanston that has a Parks and Recreation department, but not a separate park district. The Parks and Recreation department at the city of Evanston is also fraught at this time. There have been sexual harassment lawsuits. There have been pregnancy-related discrimination lawsuits, as well as the firing of Kevin Brown, Mr. Kevin Brown, who was beloved in the community and had community support, and the head of Parks and Rec department of the city of Evanston fired him. Martha, you said this before. I don't think the city of Evanston wants this. No official I've talked to, and I've talked to a number, have any interest in inheriting Ridgeville. Their plate is full. Number 8, I have a list going, is I don't think the city of Evanston has a commitment to the green space. One of the things I see as my job as a commissioner is being a steward of this public space, and ceding that over to the city of Evanston cedes that duty to keep Ridgeville as green space. The city of Evanston could sell any of that land for a profit, for a short-term gain, to a short-term problem. And finally, I think it's a bad idea to dissolve the Park District because it undermines the good work that we're doing. I think that right now we have a lot of good momentum. I think we're doing great things in terms of equity work, programming. Natalie's doing a great job. Buildings and grounds. Marcos and Ruben do excellent work. Ms. Egan is on the call tonight. She's starting a great program. J.C. Herman, all of the people who do great work and are committed to Ridgeville. I think it undermines their work to talk seriously about dissolving the park district. I also, Brian, Mr. Rosinski, I did not give you a shout out in that last. Brian does a great job, and especially during this last year, which has had a number of unforeseen events happen. I think that the way Ridgeville employees have addressed those problems and quickly overcome those hurdles is admirable. I don't think the park district should be dissolved. That's it.
Thank you, Matt.
Well said.
Yeah, I wish I could say thank you. What was it? How many points? 10, 11 different points?
9.
Very well said.
Thank you for every single point, and I am in complete agreement with every single thing that you said. And in fact, I think it's a good time to just check in with Dan and see if you're still on the fence about whether Ridgeville should dissolve.
This is not a debate. This is totally disingenuous. You said that no, this is totally unfair, and the motion on the table is that we can't talk about it again. So that's not good public discussion.
Debbie?
I guess I'd like to know why it's good public discussion for someone who is on a board to be talking about getting rid of the organization. To me, I don't understand it. I'm sure most people in the public don't understand it. It's like working against what you're supposed to be working for. But
I believe that it's the voters that own, and we work for them, not our employees. And part of our job is to be good stewards, which we have been. But in the past 2 referendums, it was the entire board, Commissioner Braun, that actually supported the idea. So that's our history.
okay, I have another question. I was on this board about 30 years ago. I never heard it talked about. So how long ago are you talking about, Dan?
Well, again, this is disingenuous kind of conversation, but I'll send the few Chicago Tribune articles that I found. I'll send them to Natalie to disperse them so that everybody can read them. I don't want to misinterpret them, but I think there's actually more information to be found too. I'd love to get back and find out the history and conversation behind that.
You've made it pretty clear in the past 2 meetings that you've thought we shouldn't exist. As a matter of fact, I believe in one meeting, I'm sure, that you said, this is undemocratic. You walked out, you came back, you said, that's why I think we shouldn't exist. And I mean, at that point, you didn't get a vote your way. But, you know, I would like to just go on. I call for the vote.
Thank you.
I think discussion has to be over, right? We've called the question here.
Yes.
Okay. We'll turn it to you, Julie, for a roll call vote. And we're voting on the motion of tabling indefinitely the talk of dissolving the park district.
Actually, point of order. Actually, we're voting on the call. So we first have to vote on that call.
So is there a second for?
I'm sorry, Charlie, can you just confirm that that's correct?
So there was a call for a vote. And so is there a second on the call for a vote?
Second.
Okay, so now there would be a roll call vote on that, because by calling for a vote, you're calling to cut off debate. And so that needs to be voted on under Robert's rules. We don't usually do that, but that is the proper way.
Okay.
Ron?
Absolutely.
Coin?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
McCourt?
You're muted.
McCourt?
Yes.
Mitchell?
Yes.
So then do I go right into a roll call vote for the?
Yes, we have now passed we terminated debate on the first question, and now we go to vote on the first question.
Okay, so Braun?
Yes.
Coin?
No.
Gaines?
Yes.
McCourt?
Yes.
And Mitchell?
No.
Okay, so the motion to table discussion of dissolution does, the motion to table it indefinitely rather does pass. Charlie, can you just clarify really quickly if somebody does want to talk about it again and they bring it up and get a second, is that a way around that, or where did we fall on that particular point?
Yeah, so if at some point in the future, if somebody seeks to put it on the agenda, it should not go on the agenda because the question has been tabled indefinitely. But somebody can bring a motion to return it. I can't think of the right term, but it's basically untable it so that the issue can be discussed. If there's a second on that and a vote in favor of that question, then it's no longer tabled and it can be brought up at a meeting.
Okay, thanks, Charlie. I just want to say something real quick to be clear about how I feel. I hate to shut down discussion, period, because it's not democratic. It could be absolutely used in abuse towards a minority opinion or a minority person in some other way besides opinion, such as race, gender, biological sex, etc. That could be very problematic, and that's absolutely something we should remind ourselves always. At the same time, I'm growing very tired of the amount of time that is being wasted on utterly non-essential business, not just non-essential in the context of virtual meetings, non-essential business, period. Really just arguably not business for this board to take on. If anyone on this board would like to talk about dissolution again and has something entirely new to say in that context, I would absolutely second hearing something new that was relevant to our business as a Park District Board of Commissioners. So I just want to be clear that I would absolutely be open to discussing it in the future if it were made relevant to what we're here to do, which it is not, in my opinion, currently. Okay, so that was actually our new business. Where did my agenda go? Here it is. That was our only point of new business. I do have a question. Charlie, I wanted to ask you something, and I didn't want to incur expense outside of the meeting, and generally if we ask you a question at the meeting, it's just considered what you're billing us for to be here. But given that this is not on the agenda for me to ask you, can I ask a legal question right now, just out of nowhere?
The board controls the board's agenda. So the board decides what they want to do at the meeting, not me.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to discuss two things that I want to consult our legal counsel with, hopefully both of which will be very quick, but they relate to things that have happened since our last meeting. And as I said, I don't want to incur additional legal expense and use taxpayer dollars outside of our meeting. So I'd like to make a motion to ask Charlie two questions. One is about committees, and one is about communications outside of the meeting between commissioners relating to the Open Meetings Act. And I'm wondering if someone will second.
I'll second.
Okay, so Charlie, to add a discussion point, I just need the motion and second, correct? Or do we need to vote to add a discussion point?
You know, again, I don't have a problem answering the questions. It's question of, I'll even stay on the phone a little bit after the meeting to do it. But if you want to have the vote, you can have the vote. I don't think anybody's going to object.
What?
Yeah, you were breaking up a little bit there. I just wanted, these questions will be quick. I just want to know, technically speaking, if I need to have a vote to add this discussion point, and I'm actually asking generally.
I don't think you need a vote on this issue.
Okay.
And I don't think anybody's going to object.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead then. Regarding committees and whether or not the Open Meetings Act applies to them, it's been my understanding that as long as we are not considered a public body committee, whatever committee we're talking about, and in this case it is the READY committee because that's our only existing committee. what constitutes a committee that is a public body and therefore is subject to the OMA versus committees that are not a public body and are not subject to the OMA?
Yeah, so hang on a second. I have some notes on this I want to get on my computer.
Sure.
So, you know, I've thought about this before. I think last year when we first started talking about the committee, and I thought about it earlier this week. So the board can have a committee, and that committee can become a public body subject to the Open Meetings Act. But that doesn't mean that a committee that the board forms just for purposes of getting advice from the community, talking about issues with the community, and then bringing information back to the board as to the opinions of the community, what people think might be helpful and what isn't helpful. That doesn't make it subject to the Open Meetings Act. And there is some court cases on this issue, and they're not, you know, they're not particularly, a lot of things in the law are not particularly definite, and that was not particularly definite either. But I just want to, unfortunately, the computer's a little slow right now because it's been up all day, I guess.
And Charlie, to be clear, I wanted to make sure I asked you this right now. I actually don't even need an answer. The answer isn't timely. I just do want an answer. So if that's something that you want to, I mean, perhaps it's unavoidable then that we would incur some additional legal time for that. But
I think generally the answer is this. If you have a committee that's essentially an informal committee, people are just selected to be on that committee or just show up and happen to be there, and so things they say are heard. There's no real solemnity, no real formalization of picking people for the committee. The committee doesn't take testimony. The committee doesn't go out and do factual investigations. It really just provides a kind of a sense of the community to people that they can bring back to the board meetings. That's not the type of community that that's subject to the Open Meetings Act. Nothing is being decided at that committee that binds anybody. So that's generally the rule. With respect to the Ready Committee, everything I understand about the Ready Committee is that essentially that's what's taking place. If I wanted to show up and be at the Ready Committee and have something to say, you wouldn't exclude me. You would take whatever was there, listen to what people have to say. People form opinions about it, but they're not out there taking testimony as to things that happened or any other kind of evidence. So because of that, I don't feel like it's subject to the Open Meetings Act.
Okay, thank you. And my other question was, it's my understanding, of course, that it's kind of the basis of the Open Meetings Act that no more than 2 commissioners are allowed to talk to one another or email with one another, et cetera, outside of meetings. If 3 are included, that's a violation. My question, yeah.
There's a topical issue there. It has to be about board business, about public business. And, you know, generally we try to shy away from that because there's no argument. And so we try to go further than maybe what people would define as public business. But go ahead.
Right. Okay. Sorry. And I understand the clarification you made. If we are all at a party, somebody could say that we talked about business, but we didn't, et cetera. What I'm asking about is that a number of times commissioners have sent something that they've written that they want the whole board to see to Brian or to Natalie and ask them to forward it to us. I'm just a little bit confused about how, well, first of all, is that really allowed or not is really my question, because if we're not allowed to email the whole rest of the board, it just seems like it's a quick skirting of that rule to ask Brian or Natalie to pass it along on their behalf. So I'm just trying to see if that's in fact allowed or not.
Yeah, so I understand the question, and we've always taken the view that it's kind of hard to do business if you're not able to show something to the executive director and he's not able to pass it around to all of the board members. It is a public document, and it would be available on a Freedom of Information Act request. I suppose if what it said in there was, you know, tomorrow we're going to have a motion on hiring my cousin Lenny to pave the parking lot. You guys vote for this and, you know, it'll be good for you. Yeah, that's problematic. We don't want deals being made in behind the scenes. But, you know, and I'm not aware of anything like that happening. I mean, what I'm aware of is that, you know, there was this document that's passed around saying, I'd like to know the answer to these legal questions. You know, I suppose on a technical reading, you could say that's a violation. But, you know, I don't think a judge would get bent out of shape over that.
Okay, would you recommend that we shy away from, like you say, it's always good to distance yourself a little bit more so there's no gray area that could be in concern? Do you think it's best we do not do that, or should we feel okay doing it?
I think it's better that you don't do that. I just don't know if it's possible to run the park district without doing something like that from time to time.
Okay, I understand that answer.
And I also think it's possible that, you know, if you make Brian aware of something and then he makes other commissioners aware of it, whether you told him to or not, I mean, that's actually part of his job to make commissioners aware of things that affect the park district. So, yeah, it's a hard question to answer. And there's always going to be some gray area. So.
Okay, so it's a use discretion kind of thing. Use your best judgment.
Yes. The best rule of thumb is, remember that we want government in the sunshine. We want people to be able to see what's going on. They got to see the sausage being made. That's all.
Okay, thanks. I'm not sure I needed the sausage analogy, but I get your point. I know it's a common phrase. Okay, so that does conclude that portion of the agenda, and it would now be call of the commissioners. And I do see in the chat that definitely Beth Stair wants to speak, but Natalie, can you just, I know you sometimes keep the order, so is Beth first? Natalie, are you there?
Yeah, I'm typing it in for you.
Oh, okay.
Martha, I put it in the chat so that you can see the order of citizen comment. And if anybody adds to that, I will add to it as well.
Okay. So I just see that it's Beth Stair and then Jean, and I'm so sorry, I don't remember how to pronounce Jean's last name. Zeiker? Okay. So I'll turn the floor over to Beth Stair then.
Hi. I'm actually out of the car now. Thank you. So I guess I have a few things. Being part of Ridgeville United for Equity, I would often get a lot of questions about, like, you know, the details of how the residents are taxed, where the money goes, what decisions are made where, all that sort of thing. So I feel that shutting down the information, shutting down the discussion is shutting down this, what you call sausage factory. I think that I am not for shutting down Ridgeville, okay? Especially in light of the fact that you guys are now, I feel that you're taking seriously your approach of transforming yourselves into an anti-racist organization, right? After you know, hearing about a lot of the residents' experiences with your organization, as well as your history of the development of your organization, and I value the fact that you've committed yourselves through the Ready Committee, everything, and you've made some really serious committed steps, and I commend you on that. I'm happy about that, and I want you to succeed. I really do. I want you to get more Black community members on your Ready Committee. I really want you to do this in the right way, and I believe that everybody all of even the white individuals on the Ready Committee, everybody. I believe that you want the best and that you want to do, you have the best of intentions. I feel that though cutting down discussion is just baiting litigation. In my discussion with lots of people in the community who are Ridgeville residents, lots of things they have they don't know about Ridgeville. A lot of people who aren't engaged, and this is actually a great opportunity to actually let them know about you, right? No matter what their race, but let them know about you. And they're like, wait, we're taxed twice? You know what? You know, so I thought that J.C. Herman's questions at last meeting was really great about where their tax dollars go. You know, if you were to be dissolved, or what, you know, these questions are not necessarily gearing up to dissolve the organization, but it is actually a way to show that being a separate park district within a larger park district is an essential, is serving an essential need and services to the community that they otherwise wouldn't be served through the greater park district organization within Evanston. And, you know, added cost for, you know, it's an added cost for RPD residents, but it's also, there's economies.
Beth, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm just going to remind you that we do have a 3-minute limit and you're past it. So if you could wrap it up, that would be great.
Okay, great. Also, I think that your comments could be perceived also, President Gaines, as anti-union, and you don't want to have that perspective. And as well as the fact that you do not have a currently imposed minority-owned business procurement policy. So if you, I would like to, that's one of the things that the Ridgeville United for Equity is also had laid out in terms of things for your Ready Committee to consider. And I hope that you consider that, especially if you're not going to consider the fact that you're not, you know, hiring union workers. And I value the fact that you're working hard to transform yourselves into an anti-racist organization. But knowing what the alternatives are in terms of where people's money is going to, I think is valuable for people to really value the fact that you are a separate organization. So I think that that discussion is not necessarily moot. I do not want you guys to dissolve. I want you guys to succeed. I want you to be an anti-racist organization.
I'm going to have to cut you off. I'm sorry. We have a 2-minute limit and it's going to be time.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay. De-escalate, yes.
Okay, so then we're moving on to Jean.
Hi, I don't know if you can see me and I don't know how to change that, but let's see.
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Okay.
Jean, I just sent you a request to share video.
Okay. Okay, I see myself now. Okay. I was made aware of the issue about dissolving Richville earlier this week. So I kind of wanted to step in and comment as a person that has attended many meetings and really value Ridgeville Park District. I came across this quote from C.S. Lewis, so don't think I'm really weird, but the quote says, you can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the future. And that is really where I see Ridgeville doing. I would like to give kudos to Natalie and Brian. Clearly their team at Ridgeville has been providing a super valuable service during this COVID pandemic thing. They are going above and beyond with their creativity, and I think everybody really appreciates it. I want to give kudos to Catherine Egan. I think her program is just fabulous, and I wish I knew better how to market it and tell everybody in the world about it, because I think it's great. I want to give kudos to Martha and the board for bringing Dr. Effiam in to guide Ridgeville to an anti-racist and a more inclusive future. Obviously, that doesn't happen overnight, but I think you guys are doing great. I also wanted to applaud Matt Mitchell and say I love all of the points that he made, and I agree with all of them. I also agree with what J.C. Herman had to say. Finally, I think I would like to say to Dan Coyne, your continued presence on the Ridgeville board is a huge negative. You ran for election on what appears to me to be a false premise. A board member is supposed to help make the organization that they are on the board of a better organization. You're supposed to help make this park better, not dissolve it. This park district is doing great. And I don't know why you would even want to contemplate dissolving it. Clearly, the city of Evanston doesn't want to have it. My $70 worth of taxes that I pay every year to Ridgeville is very well spent, and I would even pay more. But I would really ask, what good would be done by dissolving Ridgeville? No good. You guys are doing great already. Dissolving this organization would do no good to anybody. So why? I don't get it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. At this point in time, do we have any additional citizen comments from anybody that hasn't been tracked by Natalie? No. Okay. Julie, I have a request for you. I just want to make sure that you're hearing me. Hi. As I've seen done in the past at Ridgeville meetings, I'd like to specifically ask you that in your minutes, you account for J.C. Herman's comment word for word and David Braun's comment word for word.
By listening to the video, or how would I?
David Braun's was actually in writing, so that one will be easy enough to include.
Okay.
If you'll recall, you've actually done this in the past for other citizen comments that were probably just recalled by listening to the video. So I know that may be not the easiest thing in the world to do, but I want to make sure that we record everything that was said in those two comments. So I'd appreciate that. I'm sorry for the extra work for you.
Hey, Martha?
Yeah.
Is the recording available on the website after?
So good question. What we do now, as of a number of meetings ago, I'm not exactly sure when this started, Natalie can help out there. We have the YouTube channel. I'll just let you speak on that, Natalie.
Yeah, JC actually just sent a message that she has it in writing, so she'll just send it to you.
Oh, that'd be perfect. Thank you.
And
yeah, actually, just for anyone else listening, do you want to? Sorry. No. You go ahead, Natalie.
I was just going to say the recording of this meeting tonight will be on our YouTube channel later this evening, so it will be available to rewatch.
And that's for all of our board meetings,
correct.
Whether they're virtual or if and when we actually sit in a room together, they're always recorded.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so help me out with exactly how we make this transition. I'm entertaining a motion to move to executive session.
Yes.
We forgot to do, excuse me, point of order. We're supposed to do call of commissioners.
Oh, that is correct. I'm sorry. So yeah, we'll do call of commissioners. And as usual, we'll go in alphabetical order. So that would go to Debbie Braun first, if you'd like to speak.
No, nothing.
Passing. Okay, and then Commissioner Coyne.
Yeah, I'd just like to highlight a tag of hate that happened at the corner of Madison and Custer, right by the railroad tracks wall. Reba Church had put up a Black Lives Matter sign on one wall that you can easily see on Custer. But if you come around the corner, just the other day, somebody wrote something along the lines of Black Lives Matter is terrorism. And then our alderperson, Cicely Fleming, along with different other artist leaders in town, thought of a cool idea to use some artwork over that hate speech that's on the wall there. And I would just encourage people to take a look or even add your artwork to that. We're trying to take those hateful words and turn them into more loving words. So it's just kind of a creative, artsy way to respond to some hate speech that happened this week.
Thanks, Dan. I think alphabetically I'm next. I just want to reiterate what I've said in the past. I'll keep it really brief. I ran for re-election to the Ridgeville Park District's Board of Commissioners because I think Ridgeville is awesome. I fully support, as Matt Mitchell said earlier, that independent park districts just, you know, not to diss any municipality. I want to be clear. I'm not saying anything bad about anybody else. I'm instead saying that independent park districts can, you know, serve the immediate park-related needs of their community in a way that is more guaranteed, as opposed to land getting sold or budgets getting cut. We literally focus solely on parks and programming and things that relate to that. So that's our purpose. And instead of being a jack of all trades and a master of none type thing, we specialize in this. We care deeply about this. In case anyone is curious, we're not paid anything. This is not a paid elected official position. So we're just volunteering our time. We're doing the best that we can. We're obviously getting better and better, I think, in certain ways that have been talked about at this meeting and others. And I just, you know, I ache for the community that I am trying to intentionally serve here, the community of Ridgeville and literally everyone in it, that we have to sit here and talk about dissolving and not existing. You know, Commissioner Coyne didn't say that that was his intention or that he's advocating for that tonight, but in the past he has very clearly advocated for that. So, you know, it's just tough. It's tough to sit on a board and serve in the ways that I'm trying to just serve the community when it's just so directly opposed from somebody else on the board. It's tough. My goal is to work collaboratively and positively and for the people of Ridgeville, and I'm struggling with that. So I just wanted that on the record. And Dan reminded me that I just wanted to also take the opportunity to express that the charging of a hate crime in the defacing of the Black Lives Matter that happened in, now I'm totally blanking out on which one that was. It was in California, I believe. I am so happy to see that they were the people that defaced that were charged with a hate crime. That's the right thing to do. And it's so unfortunate, and I have to just be completely honest, that when there's vandalism to Black Lives Matter demonstrations in our own community, to this day, it blows my mind. I mean, this isn't the Evanston that type of behavior is not the Evanston that I thought I grew up in. It's not the Evanston that I thought I was living in now. And to some extent, it's a good thing that things get brought into the light that we all need to know about and we all need to see. So I think there's actually a positive to that we can move forward in a better way. But I think it's the right action for sure that they were charged with a hate crime. I honestly would love to see every single vandal that does that kind of vandalism be charged as well. And I hope that that applies in our direct community less and less. And that is that's it for me. So that would go to Commissioner McCourt.
I just wanted to thank Matt and you, Martha, for your comments about Ridgeville and such a positive force that both of you have been in the last year, and look forward to continuing to work with you. One of the things that maybe Matt mentioned that I didn't hear, but I wanted to mention it is, I think Ridgeville is more than important to the community. I really think it's essential to the community now. For many of the same reasons that Matt mentioned. Two things happened yesterday that kind of reminded me of that. I went to the Crown Center to buy tokens for the beach, and it cost me $168 for 6 tokens. So I'm going to use the beach probably 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 or 5 hours with the grandkids. And then I will pay my tax bill. And Gene alluded to it yesterday. I paid $80 for Ridgeville. I got a little bit of an advantage because I'm a senior citizen. So maybe I owed him $100, but I got a little break because I'm a senior citizen. I mean, if Ridgeville isn't more than that to the entire Ridgeville neighborhood, basically, I would be shocked. I mean, every day I see, especially during normal times, activity in the parks, people enjoying the parks, dealing with having, participating in the programs that Natalie and Brian and everybody else, JC, and everybody that works for Ridgeville, spends a whole lot of time, doing. So it just seems to me that Ridgeville is more than just an independent, small park district. It's an essential part of our neighborhood and our community. And I think we as board members are responsible to continue in that positive approach and tone in the future. What happened 50 or 60 years ago is meaningless, in my opinion. It's what's happening, as Jean said, today and tomorrow. And that's what we should be focusing on. So I just want to thank you both for your comments and feel that, everybody is getting a tremendous value for their dollar at the Ridgeville Park District. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Mitchell?
I wanted to thank the citizens who have stuck with it and were joined us tonight, and also invite the community, if they have input regarding our budget, programs, projects, now's the time to bring those forward. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Before we go into executive session, I just want to take the opportunity to remind people that we do have a meeting tomorrow that's also an open meeting. Yeah, sorry, Natalie.
Sorry, Martha, just a quick question that we had from some citizens that made comment. So the comments that were in written form, JC read her letter out loud and I read David's. For other citizens that made comments tonight, do you want them to submit something in writing, or is it fine for Julie to summarize what they've said as she normally does in the minutes?
Well, the precedent that was set the last time that a commissioner asked for a citizen comment to be put in writing, word for word, he asked that that person's comment be put into writing and nobody else's. And then that's how Julie's minutes manifested, is that that person's comments were verbatim. So I think the purpose is to highlight certain comments. Anyone else on this board who wants to call for specific comments to be verbatim can do so. Also, I would say that it's my stance that anyone who spoke who also wants to submit a written statement, I don't see any reason that that can't be included. Especially because obviously if some people prefer consulting the written record as opposed to the video record, sure, I don't see any reason that we wouldn't include that. So I would say we default to letting Julie summarize what she hears, period, unless somebody asks for otherwise in a specific case.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So I was just in the process of saying that the Ready Committee meeting is tomorrow. It is an open meeting simply because it is the whole board meeting for that training. It's our last training that is open to the public. Is that Zoom link posted, Natalie, so that people can, yes, okay. So then I move that we go to executive session.
I'll second. Pat McCord seconds.
Thank you. And Julie, I think that's got to be a roll call vote too.
So that's going into executive session?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Braun? Commissioner Braun, you're muted still. It's okay.
Yes.
Okay. Coyne?
Yes.
Gaines?
Yes.
McCourt?
Yes.
And Mitchell?
Yes.
Mitchell, thank you.
Okay, so everybody knows what we're doing, going to the different Zoom link.
Oh, right. Okay.
Natalie, does that mean that we leave this meeting?
Yes, you leave this meeting. I'm going to leave it running. And then you come back at the end of your executive session to adjourn. I'm going to pause the recording, but I'm going to leave this all open.
And Natalie, are you also with us when we adjourn, or when we come back, or you're leaving as of now?
No, I have to stay because I'm your happy host.
Okay.
Am I staying or am I leaving?
Good question.
Julie, you should probably stay. No, you don't have to, because you can watch the recording and see the time they came back to adjourn.
Okay.
That's all we do.
Report it for you. So it's
Because usually I don't do that when you have executive sessions. I just leave.
Right.
I say the time
Yeah.
that
Julie
the
doesn't
regular
stay, somebody
meeting
takes minutes.
closes.
Brian, what did you say?
Times. I'll
Julie
do
doesn't stay, somebody takes minutes.
I'll take the minutes.
yeah, Julie, you're fine. It's fine.
And I just note the time that this meeting is over as of going into executive session. Right?
Yeah, and then Pat will include in his minutes that we adjourned, I guess, at the
Okay.
end.
I think that's what normally happens. Yeah.
Yes. Martha, I've set up the executive session so I don't have to be there as a host. So you should be fine. If there's any problem, call me.
Okay.
And I'll be here when you get back.
Goodbye, everybody. And thank you.
I'm leaving meeting.
Okay. So you don't have to go back, right?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah, we're still waiting on Debbie though, unless she just popped on. Yeah, I think we're just waiting on Debbie.
I thought the Zoom link would stay open in the other tab that I had, but it just defaulted and was like, even though it was open, it wasn't the link. I guess that relates to not 2 meetings at once or something. Okay, so we are just adjourning, and how would we take a roll call vote to adjourn without Julie? Do I
We
do it?
don't vote on the,
We vote on the raise.
we vote on the raise.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. Yes,
Yeah.
of course we do. So,
Make a motion.
yeah, are you making the motion?
I will. I'll make a motion to increase Natalie Solis' salary from $40,805 to $42,845. And the
Second.
would be the same.
Matthew Mitchell seconds.
Okay, and then we are supposed to still roll call vote in these meetings. Should we just say our names as we vote and do it in order? And you can record it, Pat?
Yeah.
I'm the last guy. I'll do it.
You're what?
I'm the last guy. Debbie Braun, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Dan Coyne, how do you vote?
Yes.
President Gaines, what say you?
Yeah.
Mr. McCourt, how do you
Yes.
vote?
Yes.
I, Matthew Mitchell, vote yes on the motion.
Okay, the motion passes. Then at this point, I'll make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
I'll
Second.
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 So Pat, why don't we go with your second there? And Matt, do you want to roll call us again for that?
Sure thing. Commissioner Braun,
Yes.
Commissioner Coyne,
You bet.
Commissioner Gaines,
Yes.
Commissioner McCourt,
Yes.
Commissioner Mitchell, yes.
Pat,
Okay. What?
Pat, just so I can give this to Julie, will you just tell me that number again? So my starting and the ending.
Your current salary, according to my notes, are $40,805, and
Okay.
the raise is 5%, or to $42,845.
And Natalie, just nothing against Pat. Check the math. What it is a 5% raise. So that's the correct multiplier there.
Okay. I will make sure that's in the record for her. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much.
I appreciate it. Good night, everybody.
Good night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Thank
Good
you.
night, everyone.
Bye.